Beneath layers of sand, jungle, and time lie the whispers of cities the world has forgotten. Not ruins, not relics, but entire civilizations, gone without a trace. Their streets once echoed with life. Their towers touched skies now ruled by silence. And yet, no map shows where they stood. No satellite has pierced their hiding place. They are ghosts of empire, erased from the surface of the earth, but not from our imagination. Why did they vanish? Were they destroyed by war, consumed by nature, or hidden on purpose? What secrets did they guard so fiercely that not even time dared to reveal them? From the golden halls of El Dorado to the sunken walls of Atlantis, from jungle-covered temples lost in Honduras to shimmering desert cities buried beneath shifting dunes, these lost cities still haven't been found, and perhaps they never will. But tonight, we follow the clues. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into 3 hours of the most haunting, forgotten, and unexplained lost cities in human history. In the heart of South America, where the dense emerald canopy of the Amazon stretches as far as the eye can see, there lies a silence so deep it swallows the footsteps of those who enter. Mist coils around towering ceiba trees. Rivers wind through the jungle like silver veins, their currents hiding secrets beneath layers of silt and time. This is a land both breathtaking and unforgiving, a place where myths have been born and men have vanished chasing them. Among these myths, none has endured with such hypnotic power as El Dorado, the Golden City. But El Dorado was never truly a city, not at first. The origins of the legend trace back to the highlands of what is now Colombia. Spanish conquistadors, hearing whispers from indigenous peoples, learned of a ritual said to take place at a sacred lake. There, a tribal chieftain, the Zipa of the Muisca people, would cover his body in fine gold dust, transforming himself into a living deity. He would then board a raft, surrounded by priests and sacred offerings, and sail to the center of the lake. With solemn reverence, he would cast treasures into the water, gold, emeralds, and other offerings, as tribute to the gods. This wasn't a tale of a city, but of a man, a golden man. And yet, over time, the story changed. It grew. It spread beyond the Andes and began to take on new forms. Spanish chroniclers and European storytellers reimagined El Dorado not as a man, but as an entire kingdom made of gold. Streets paved in shining metal, palaces of pure light, a place where wealth flowed like water, untouched by greed or decay. The obsession that followed would be catastrophic. Conquistadors like Gonzalo Pizarro and Francisco de Orellana led brutal expeditions into the rainforest, driven by greed and blind hope. Their journeys were marked by disease, starvation, betrayal, and death. They wandered through uncharted jungles, certain that just beyond the next bend in the river, they would stumble upon untold riches. But El Dorado remained elusive, always just out of reach, always hidden by trees, water, or time. And still, the legend grew. In the centuries that followed, explorers, treasure hunters, and scholars all tried to locate El Dorado. Some searched the Guyana highlands, others turned their eyes to the Orinoco Basin or the headwaters of the Amazon. The stories diverged. Some spoke of a lost city hidden on a mountaintop, unreachable by ordinary means. Others insisted it was submerged in a hidden lake, perhaps Lake Paraíba, a body of water once marked on colonial maps, but now nowhere to be found. Could the story of El Dorado have been inspired by a real place? Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of complex and wealthy civilizations throughout the Amazon and Andean regions. The Muisca themselves left behind advanced metallurgy, vast salt mines, and intricate political systems. And further south, near the borders of Brazil and Bolivia, The remnants of massive earthen structures suggest that sophisticated urban centers once flourished deep in the jungle. Perhaps El Dorado is not a city made of gold, but a memory, a distorted echo of real wealth, interpreted through the lens of foreign conquerors, a misunderstanding magnified by time and greed. Or perhaps the truth is stranger still. There are theories, speculative but not entirely dismissible, that suggest El Dorado could be one of several legendary mirror cities said to exist across the world. Cities designed not to be discovered, but to be forgotten. Places built with an understanding of the land that modern civilizations have lost, hidden in plain sight or protected by natural camouflage and indigenous guardianship. Others point to aerial anomalies captured in remote Amazonian regions, grid-like patterns, unexplained clearings, geoglyphs that resemble city layouts. Could these be remnants of something once vast and thriving, now reclaimed by the forest? And then there is Lake Guatavita, the ceremonial lake where the legend began. In the 16th and 20th centuries, attempts were made to drain it. Workers unearthed golden ornaments and artifacts, but the excavation was incomplete. The lake held tight to its depths. Whatever lies at its true bottom remains untouched. What draws us so relentlessly to El Dorado? Is it the promise of gold? Or something deeper, a longing for lost knowledge, for the idea that once, somewhere, humans lived in perfect harmony with nature and abundance? A paradise not built by gods, but by people we've chosen to forget. And if El Dorado was real, would we even recognize it? In the end, the legend continues, not in maps or monuments, but in the very idea of a hidden world waiting to be rediscovered. So we ask, is El Dorado just a story, a mirage born from colonial imagination? Or is it still out there, shrouded in green, protected by time, and watching, silently, as we search? We may never know for certain. But the jungle, it remembers. High above the clouds, where jagged peaks pierce the sky and wind howls through ancient stone, there exists a silence unlike any other. The Himalayas, immense, timeless, unforgiving, stretch like a sleeping titan across Central Asia. These mountains have swallowed countless footsteps, erased entire paths, and guarded secrets as old as civilization itself. Within this realm of snow and shadow, legend whispers of a hidden kingdom, a place untouched by war, untouched by decay. A place called Shambhala. Unlike El Dorado or Atlantis, Shambhala is not described in terms of gold or conquest. It is not a city of treasure, but of enlightenment. The earliest references appear in ancient Tibetan and Indian texts, especially within the Kalachakra Tantra, a sacred scripture in Tibetan Buddhism. There, Shambhala is not merely a location, but a beacon. A radiant realm ruled by wisdom, peace, and spiritual purity. A kingdom encircled by snow-capped mountains, invisible to the uninitiated, protected not by weapons, but by understanding. But what is Shambhala truly? Is it a myth cloaked in spiritual symbolism? Or a real place, forgotten, hidden, perhaps even protected by more than geography? According to the Kalachakra tradition, Shambhala lies beyond the Himalayas, in a valley encased by mountains, where a perfect society flourishes in secret. Its inhabitants are said to be spiritually evolved, immune to suffering and corruption. Its capital, Kalapa, is described in exquisite detail, a city of symmetry and serenity, where knowledge and compassion reign over ambition and greed. It is a world untouched by time, waiting for a future moment to re-emerge. The texts go further. They speak of a prophecy, that one day, when the world falls into chaos and moral decline, the king of Shambhala will rise and lead an army of righteousness to cleanse the darkness and restore balance. To some, this is allegory. To others, it is a warning. Western explorers became aware of Shambhala in the 19th century, when translations of Eastern texts began to circulate in Europe. The legend captivated mystics, scholars, and spiritual seekers alike. In the early 20th century, the Russian artist and philosopher Nicholas Roerich led expeditions across Central Asia, claiming he received guidance from local lamas about the hidden kingdom's whereabouts. Roerich was not alone. The Nazi SS, under Heinrich Himmler, also sponsored expeditions to Tibet, believing Shambhala to be a source of ancient Aryan wisdom. These darker appropriations added layers of intrigue, though they drifted far from the myth's original intent. But does the idea of a hidden, isolated kingdom have any basis in fact? Geographically, the Himalayas and Tibetan Plateau remain among the most inaccessible terrains on Earth. Even today, satellite imaging reveals uncharted valleys, high-altitude lakes, and secluded regions where human presence is sparse or non-existent. Throughout history, entire villages have disappeared into these mountains. Is it so impossible to believe that a settlement, ancient and inward-facing, might have chosen seclusion over contact? There are tantalizing clues. Some researchers point to the kingdom of Zhangjung, which predated Tibetan Buddhism and was once said to possess advanced spiritual knowledge. Others suggest that parts of the Shambhala myth were inspired by real places like the hidden valleys of Bhutan, the sacred Mount Kailash, or even lost regions of northern India and Mongolia. The existence of secluded monastic communities, living in complete isolation for centuries, offers a glimpse into what a secretive society might resemble. Then there are the more esoteric theories. Some believe that Shambhala is not located in the physical world at all, but in a parallel dimension, reachable only through deep meditation or altered states of consciousness. Others link it to the concept of Agartha, a subterranean world of inner earth, where advanced beings live in harmony beyond the reach of modern civilization. While these ideas fall outside mainstream scholarship, they persist, passed from seeker to seeker, whispered in spiritual circles, and encoded in art, literature, and ritual. Curiously, the legend of a hidden utopia is not unique to Tibet. Nearly every culture contains echoes of such a place. The Greeks spoke of Hyperborea, the Celts of Avalon, the Hindus of the Satya Yuga. Always a lost world of peace, always just beyond reach. But perhaps Shambhala endures not because we expect to find it, but because we need it to exist. In a world marked by instability and fragmentation, Shambhala offers a counter-image, a place where wisdom guides leadership, where compassion tempers power, where humanity has not failed but transcended. Whether it lies in a hidden valley or within the unexplored spaces of the human spirit, its message is profound. And so, the question lingers. Is Shambhala a memory, a metaphor, a destination? Or is it still waiting, somewhere behind a wall of stone and snow, hidden in silence, untouched by time, until the world is ready to understand it? The mountains keep their secrets, and Shambhala remains unseen. Now, as we leave behind the snow-shrouded heights of Shambhala and descend once more into the living green of the Earth's most impenetrable jungle, we enter a world where vines strangle stone and time swallows entire cities whole. In the dense, dripping heart of the Mosquitia rainforest in eastern Honduras, one of the last truly unexplored wildernesses on the planet, there lies a legend spoken of in hushed voices, La Ciudad Blanca, the White City, or, as it's more hauntingly known, the City of the Monkey God. This region, vast and largely untouched, is an ocean of trees where even satellite imagery struggles to see clearly. Rain falls in sudden sheets, and the canopy closes overhead like a ceiling. Insects buzz with an electric persistence, and jaguars move silently between the shadows. To walk here is to walk back in time, into a place where human history once thrived, and then vanished. For centuries, indigenous peoples spoke of a lost city buried deep within this jungle, a place of great wealth, abandoned in a single day. Some versions say it was cursed, others that its people fled a terrible plague, and at the center of the tale, always, was the image of a strange deity, a powerful creature, half man, half monkey, worshipped with reverence and fear. Spanish conquistadors, too, recorded whispers of this city as early as the 16th century, though none ever claimed to have seen it. The jungle was too thick, the terrain too unforgiving, and so the legend endured, passed from voice to voice, surviving for centuries without physical proof. Then, in 2012, something remarkable happened. A team of scientists and archaeologists, working with advanced LiDAR, light detection and ranging technology, conducted a scan of the Mosquitia region from the air. What they discovered beneath the treetops astonished them. Clear evidence of geometric structures, plazas, pyramidal shapes, and mounded earthworks, all buried under the forest floor. Man-made and unmistakable. In 2015, a ground expedition led by American explorer Steve Elkins confirmed what the data suggested. They found elaborate stone sculptures, including one with a carved animal head. Some believe it to be a jaguar, others claim it resembled a monkey. Was this the fabled White City? Had the city of the monkey god finally been found? The media quickly seized the story. Headlines hailed the discovery of a lost civilization. But archaeologists urged caution. What had been found was indeed astonishing, but it was only the beginning. No one yet knows who built the city, how large it once was, or why it disappeared. It may not have been a single city at all, but part of a larger, forgotten culture that once flourished across the region. And then, just as intrigue reached its peak, something strange happened. Members of the expedition team began falling ill. Several were diagnosed with a rare parasitic disease, mucocutaneous leishmaniasis, that eats away at the flesh. It's a disease carried by sandflies and found in deep jungle regions. But to many, it seemed like more than coincidence. Whispers of a curse resurfaced, echoes of ancient warnings that those who entered the city would suffer. It's here that the boundary between history and myth begins to blur. Who were the people who built the city of the monkey god? There is no known written language, no deciphered record. The artifacts suggest a society both sophisticated and symbolically rich, yet entirely distinct from the better-known Maya civilization to the west. Some theorists have speculated that this culture may have practiced human sacrifice, possibly to animal deities, though the evidence remains sparse and inconclusive. And what of the monkey god itself? In many Mesoamerican cultures, monkeys held symbolic significance, often associated with playfulness, creativity, or mischief. But the legends of this city describe something darker. A protector? A punisher? Was this being a misunderstood deity, or something else entirely? Some fringe theories even point to a surviving memory of hybrid beings or ancient genetic manipulation. Ideas often dismissed by scholars, yet still persistent in popular imagination. Others suggest a more grounded, yet no less mysterious, explanation. That the monkey god was a powerful local ruler, deified over time, or a shaman figure who wore the mask of a monkey as part of ceremonial rites. The truth, as with so many aspects of this story, remains elusive. Today, the exact location of the site is kept secret, to protect it from looters and destruction. Very little excavation has occurred. The jungle, relentless and patient, continues to reclaim what was briefly exposed. Nature, it seems, is not yet ready to surrender the full story. But the questions linger. Why was this city abandoned? What happened to its people? and how much remains buried beneath the layers of earth and time. In the stillness of the Mosquitia, where every tree might conceal a wall, a sculpture, or a forgotten god, the city of the monkey, God waits. Perhaps it always has, and we are left to wonder, have we glimpsed only a fragment of what was once a vast and complex civilization? Or is the true heart of the legend, whatever it may be, still hidden deeper in the jungle, beyond the reach of lidar, maps, and even imagination? The forest does not answer, it only watches. Beyond the lush jungles of Honduras and the carved stone remnants of forgotten gods, the landscape shifts, suddenly and completely. Now we enter a different kind of silence, not one born of canopy and vines, but of sand and sky. A stillness broken only by the wind, sweeping over endless dunes like whispers of time itself. This is the Sahara, an ocean of sand that stretches beyond the horizon, concealing secrets beneath every ripple and crest. And within this harsh, desolate vastness, legend speaks of a city lost to both time and storm, a city called Zerzura. To those who believe in it, Zerzura is not simply a mirage or tale. It is a white city, hidden somewhere in the Libyan desert, said to gleam under the sun like a beacon amid the endless ochre. Its gates are described in the ancient texts as being guarded by black giants. Its buildings, crafted in white stone, shimmer in the distance, glimpsed and then gone. Its fountains are cool, its gardens fertile. And its treasure, they say, remains untouched. But where does this story begin? Mentions of Zerzura first appear in medieval Arabic writings. A 13th century manuscript known as the Kitab al-Kanuz, or the Book of Hidden Treasures, refers to a lost oasis city called Zerzura, located somewhere west of the Nile. It was said to be a place of kindness and prosperity, inhabited by people with fair skin and blue eyes, outsiders perhaps, or simply a poetic reflection of the unknown. Later accounts by Islamic historians and desert travelers added more layers to the mystery. They spoke of a valley, fertile and isolated, protected by steep cliffs, and accessible only by those who knew the paths carved by time and wind. Some described ruins scattered across the Egyptian-Libyan borderlands, broken walls, pottery shards, dry wells, all hints of what may have once been. Yet for centuries, Zerzura remained a rumor, an idea passed between caravan leaders, whispered in the shadow of sandstorms, or etched faintly on faded maps marked Terra Incognita. Then came the 20th century, and with it, the age of aerial exploration. In the 1930s, a group of British adventurers and desert explorers formed what became known as the Long-Range Desert Group, originally tasked with reconnaissance but deeply fascinated by desert mysteries. Among them was Ralph Bagnold, a pioneering desert navigator, and Laszlo Almasi, an enigmatic Hungarian pilot whose exploits would later inspire the character at the heart of the English Patient. Almasi, in particular, became obsessed with Zerzura. He studied ancient texts, mapped remote wadis, and flew his small aircraft over vast tracts of unexplored sand. In 1932, during an expedition in the Gilf Kebir and Jebel Uweinat region, deep in the Libyan-Egyptian-Sudanese triangle, he claimed to have found evidence of a hidden valley filled with vegetation and signs of prehistoric life. Cave paintings, tools, stone shelters. Was this the source of the legend? Or had he found something older, something forgotten even by those who first told the tale? To this day, Almasi's findings remain controversial. No definitive ruins of Zerzura have ever been found. The desert, ever shifting, often hides what it once revealed. Some believe Zerzura may have been a real oasis, long since dried up or buried beneath centuries of sand. Others suggest it was never a single city, but a fusion of multiple tales, oases remembered, renamed, and romanticized. But not all agree that Zerzura was a place at all. Some interpretations frame it as a metaphor, a paradise of the soul, a spiritual destination reachable only by those who have mastered both the landscape and themselves. In this view, the desert becomes a trial, and the city a reward for perseverance, wisdom, or purity. A vision seen only by the worthy, or the lost. And then, as always, there are the more fringe possibilities. That Zerzura was an outpost of an unknown ancient civilization, that its people were survivors of a forgotten cataclysm or travelers from far beyond Africa. Some point to the architectural similarities between remote Saharan ruins and those found further east, asking whether ancient trade routes might have connected distant cultures in ways we have yet to fully understand. Others suggest extraterrestrial intervention, or time slips, or deliberate concealment by secret societies. The theories multiply, as they always do when evidence is scarce and curiosity is high. What is certain, however, is that the Sahara is vast beyond comprehension. Satellite imaging continues to reveal anomalies, subsurface structures, dry riverbeds, unnatural alignments. Even with today's technology, much of it remains unexplored. A single storm can erase years of footprints. A single dune can bury a city. So the question remains, is Zerzura real? A forgotten kingdom nestled in a remote valley, guarded by cliffs and time? Or a mirage made of memory, a story told to bring hope to the hopeless as they cross the most merciless land on earth? And if it is real, has it already been found and mistaken for something else? Or does it still lie hidden, waiting for one last gust of wind to shift the sand and reveal the gates once described in ancient prose? Somewhere, out in the silent blaze of the desert, the truth may still be resting, untouched, unspoiled, and unknown. The jungle breathes. In the depths of the Amazon, far from the last outpost of civilization, there is a place where the trees grow impossibly tall, their branches forming a canopy so dense that daylight barely reaches the forest floor. The air is heavy with moisture, the ground soft with decay, and every sound, every insect hum, every bird call feels amplified, as if the jungle itself is listening. Here, amid a labyrinth of rivers, cliffs, and uncharted terrain, one of the 20th century's most enduring mysteries took root. It is known simply as the Lost City of Z. The legend begins with the British explorer Colonel Percy Harrison Fawcett, a man equal parts soldier, surveyor, and seeker. In the early 1900s, Fawcett made several expeditions to South America under the Royal Geographical Society, helping to chart borders between Brazil and Bolivia. But during these journeys, he encountered something unexpected: fragments of pottery, stories passed down by local tribes, and cryptic references in 18th century Portuguese manuscripts suggesting that deep within the jungle, there once existed a great and ancient civilization, one unlike anything known to the West. Fawcett gave this theoretical city a name: Z. He believed it had once been a sophisticated urban center, built long before European contact, perhaps even rivaling those of the Old World in complexity and culture. While scholars in Europe dismissed the idea, arguing that the Amazon's poor soil and harsh conditions made large-scale civilization impossible, Fawcett disagreed. He had seen enough to believe otherwise. In 1925, driven by this conviction, Fawcett launched what would become his final expedition. Accompanied by his son Jack and Jack's friend Raleigh Rymel, he disappeared into the jungle and was never seen again. Their vanishing became legend. Over the years, dozens of search parties followed, some returning empty-handed, others vanishing themselves. The jungle swallowed all, and with each passing year, the myth of the lost city of Z only grew. What exactly was Fawcett chasing? Some believed Z to be an Amazonian El Dorado, a city of immense wealth. Others saw it as a spiritual mission. Fawcett, increasingly mystical in his letters, spoke of great spiritual centers and higher civilizations. Some even speculated that he was seeking not just a city, but a portal to another world, a theory fueled by the cryptic tone of his final writings and the secrecy surrounding his route. And yet, for all the mystery surrounding Fawcett himself, his core idea that the Amazon once hosted complex urban societies has, in recent years, begun to find support in the very science that once refuted it. In the early 2000s, archaeologists uncovered massive earthworks in the Brazilian state of Acre, circular enclosures, straight roads, causeways, evidence of organized settlements hidden beneath centuries of jungle growth. These geoglyphs, dating back more than 1,000 years, suggest the presence of an interconnected society spread across vast distances. More recently, LiDAR technology, which uses laser pulses to reveal structures beneath dense vegetation, has uncovered similar signs of urban planning in regions once thought too remote or inhospitable for complex life. Grid-like patterns, terraced fields, and remnants of roads all point to a kind of Amazonian civilization that mirrors what Fawcett imagined. Not one city, perhaps, but many. A network, a forgotten world. Could these be remnants of Z? Or was Fawcett looking in the wrong place entirely? Some suggest he may have misunderstood indigenous oral histories, interpreting sacred or symbolic locations as literal cities. Others argue that he may have stumbled upon clues to multiple lost cultures and mistakenly fused them into a single, overarching idea. There is also the theory, speculative but not impossible, that Fawcett may have found what he was looking for and chosen not to return. Some rumors suggest he integrated into a remote tribe, or that he was protected, or silenced, by those who wished the secrets of the jungle to remain hidden. Even now, the Amazon guards its truths. It remains one of the least explored regions on Earth, with vast areas still unmapped. Each year, new archaeological discoveries are made, fragments of a larger story slowly coming into view. But one cannot help but wonder, if Z does exist, or did, what would it mean for our understanding of human history? Of the assumptions long held by scholars about primitive peoples and civilized centers? Would it reshape the way we view the Amazon, not as an untouched wilderness, but as a land once sculpted by human hands? And what, too, of Fawcett? Was he merely a romantic chasing illusions into the green abyss? Or was he right all along, one man willing to risk everything in pursuit of a forgotten truth? The jungle has never told. But somewhere, perhaps beneath layers of soil and vine, the foundations of Z still remain. Not just a lost city, but a lost idea. An invitation to remember that even in the most remote corners of the earth, history may still be hiding, waiting to be found. As we leave behind the tangled green silence of the Amazon and the enduring mystery of the lost city of Z, we turn our gaze northward, across deserts, mountains, and valleys, toward a story etched in both myth and migration. In the heart of ancient Mesoamerica, where great empires once rose and fell, there lingers the tale of a homeland lost to time, a sacred origin point, a place spoken of in reverence and mystery. It is called Aztlán. To the Aztecs, who referred to themselves as the Mexica, Aztlán was more than a distant land. It was the beginning of everything. According to their origin stories, Aztlán was the ancestral home from which 7 Nahua tribes emerged, a place of white herons and abundant waters, of caves and temples, of sacred lakes reflecting the sun. From this mythic land, they began a long pilgrimage that would ultimately lead them to the Valley of Mexico, where they would found one of the most powerful civilizations in the pre-Columbian Americas, Tenochtitlan, the city upon the lake. But where was Aztlán? Was it ever a real place? The Aztec codices, ancient painted manuscripts, offer clues, though never definitive ones. The Codex Boturini, for instance, depicts the Mexica's departure from Aztlán, a canoe gliding across water, figures stepping out toward an uncertain journey. The codices describe 7 caves, or Chicomostoc, from which the tribes emerged. These images are symbolic, rich with meaning, but frustratingly ambiguous when it comes to geography. Some believe Aztlán was purely allegorical, a metaphorical place representing spiritual origins, or even a retelling of ancient migration memories passed down through generations. But others suggest it may have been real, a lost settlement, a homeland hidden beyond the maps of known Mesoamerican territory. Various scholars and researchers have proposed possible locations. Some place Aztlán in northern Mexico, perhaps in the modern-day states of Nayarit, Durango, or Zacatecas, regions that align with the general direction of the Mexica migration. Others extend the possibilities into the southwestern United States, suggesting it might lie somewhere in Arizona, New Mexico, or even as far north as Utah. The landscapes described in oral histories, deserts, lakes, caves, and islands, can all be found across these territories. And then there is the linguistic clue. The word Aztlán translates roughly as place of whiteness, or place of the herons. Is this a poetic description of a real geographical location, or a symbolic reference to purity, transformation, or divine guidance? In the early 20th century, Mexican nationalists and cultural historians embraced Aztlán not just as an archaeological puzzle, but as a powerful emblem of indigenous identity. In Chicano movements of the 1960s and 70s, Aztlán was reimagined as the spiritual homeland of Mexican-American people, a reclamation of heritage, sovereignty, and belonging. This modern revival layered the myth with new political and cultural significance, transforming it from a question of where into a statement of who. But still, the original mystery remains. If Aztlán was a physical place, what became of it? Could it have been a thriving center, now buried beneath centuries of sediment and conquest? A city erased by time, like so many others before it? Or perhaps it was a confederation of villages whose memory was fused into a singular myth over generations of oral storytelling? Some speculative theories go further, that Aztlán was a remnant of a forgotten advanced civilization, that it was tied to older, now lost cultures predating even the Olmecs, that it might have possessed knowledge or practices deemed too sacred or too dangerous to survive colonial erasure. There are even those who attempt to connect Aztlán to broader global myths of lost homelands. Parallels are drawn to Atlantis, to Lemuria, to Shambhala. Stories of distant lands, golden ages, and sudden exoduses. Though these ideas drift beyond accepted academic interpretations, they reflect a persistent theme in human consciousness, that somewhere, in the past, there was a place where harmony once flourished, and then disappeared. But what separates Aztlán from many other lost cities is this: it is not merely remembered, it is still felt. To many, Aztlán lives on, not in stone ruins or buried foundations, but in memory, language, and culture. It is whispered in rituals, painted in murals, sung in stories passed from parent to child. The Mexica may have lost the physical trail centuries ago, but the spiritual path remains. And so, the question lingers in both archaeology and myth. Was Aztlán a place that once stood on this earth? Or is it a dream encoded in the heart of a people seeking their origin in a world that no longer remembers? Even now, beneath the deserts of northern Mexico or the silent plateaus of the American Southwest, something might be waiting. An echo, a fragment, a foundation stone, a beginning. And if Aztlán does still exist, hidden in some remote corner of the land, would we recognize it? Or has it already been found, and simply not understood for what it truly was? From the sun-soaked deserts of Aztlán, we now shift to the misty, wind-swept coasts of northwestern France, a place where land meets sea in a timeless rhythm of crashing waves and retreating tides. Here, along the rugged shores of Brittany, the air feels thick with history. Ancient stone circles dot the landscape, and the ocean seems to whisper secrets into the salt-stained cliffs. It is in this wild and brooding corner of the world that the legend of Yais was born, a city said to have once stood beneath the waves. Yais, or Ker-Is in Breton, was no ordinary city. According to medieval legend, it was built below sea level in a bay along the coast of Douarnenez, protected from the ocean by a system of massive dikes and gates. It was ruled by King Gradlon, a wise and powerful monarch, and designed by the hands of men favored by the gods. The city was said to be a marvel of its time, its walls gleaming, its towers soaring, its streets echoing with music and celebration. Wealth, art, and beauty flowed freely within its borders. But Yais had a flaw, not in its engineering, but in its heart. The legends say that Gradlon's daughter, Dahut, also known as Ahes, was spirited and headstrong. Some say she was seduced by dark forces, others that she simply longed for freedom in a city bound by rules. In many versions of the story, it is Dahut who steals the keys to the sea gates and opens them, whether in rebellion, in ignorance, or under the influence of a devilish suitor. And so the sea rushes in. In an instant, the proud city is drowned, its towers swallowed, its music silenced. Only King Gradlon survives, riding his horse to safety as the waters consume everything behind him. But is Yais just a myth? For centuries, sailors off the coast of Brittany have spoken of strange sounds rising from the sea, bells tolling from beneath the waves, voices echoing through the mist. Some claim to have seen spires in the deep, glinting just beneath the surface on calm days. In local folklore, the drowned city of Yais remains alive, haunting the ocean floor, punished for its pride, but never fully gone. The story of Yais first appeared in written form in the 15th century, though it is almost certainly older, passed orally from bard to bard in the Breton language shaped by Celtic tradition. Like Atlantis, Yais represents a golden age undone by hubris, a city of wonder lost to nature's fury. But unlike the warm seas of the Mediterranean, the waters that swallowed Yais are cold, gray, and unforgiving. Is there any historical basis for the legend? Some historians believe that Yais could be a memory of real coastal settlements destroyed by rising seas or catastrophic storms. During the post-Roman period, sea levels along the Atlantic coast did shift, and there is evidence that parts of Brittany's coastline were once more expansive. Ancient stone structures now partially submerged could have fueled the idea of a city lost to the tide. There are even older layers to this mystery. Some scholars suggest that the legend of Yais may be tied to pre-Christian spiritual beliefs, a symbolic story about the balance between land and sea, order and chaos. In this interpretation, Dahut becomes not a villain, but a priestess figure whose rebellion represents the end of one era and the beginning of another. Others have noted intriguing parallels between Yais and stories found elsewhere in Europe. In Wales, the legend of Cantre'r Gwaelod tells of a sunken kingdom with eerily similar themes: gates, betrayal, a drowned city. In Ireland, the myth of Tir Fothuin, the land beneath the waves, echoes the same idea. Could these be fragments of a shared cultural memory, scattered across Celtic lands and refracted through time? More speculative theories have emerged as well. Some suggest that Yais was not a city in the literal sense, but a spiritual or symbolic realm, perhaps a forgotten center of knowledge or an early cultural hub erased not by water, but by conquest or assimilation. There are even those who see in the story of Wise a hidden allegory for the fall of ancient matriarchal societies, buried beneath the rise of patriarchal rule and reinterpreted by later Christian chroniclers. And still, the sea keeps its secrets. No archaeological evidence has confirmed the existence of Wise, yet the legend persists, alive in songs, poems, and local belief. Churches in Brittany still bear statues of King Gradlon. The coastline around Douarnenez is filled with names and symbols that recall the drowned city. And every now and then, on particularly quiet nights, the locals say you can hear bells tolling far out at sea. What draws us to tales like Eyes? Perhaps it is the enduring allure of what has been lost, a longing for a time when art and nature coexisted in delicate harmony until human ambition tipped the scale. Or perhaps it's something more, an unconscious recognition that the sea does not only swallow, but preserve. That beneath the surface, something may still remain. And so the question lingers. Was Yis ever real? Or is it a story created to explain something older and more complex than we can now remember? In the swirling mists of the Breton coast, between the tides and the fog, the line between fact and myth becomes as fluid as the sea itself. As the echoes of Wise fade into the mist and the tide retreats once more from Brittany's haunted shores, we travel far across the oceans, past India's southern tip, beyond the Maldives, and into the vast expanse of the Indian Ocean. Here, the waters stretch wide and deep, calm in places, violent in others, holding within them an enigma that has stirred scientific debate, spiritual speculation, and imaginative wonder for over a century. It is the mystery of Lemuria, a lost continent said to have once spanned the Indian and Pacific Oceans, now vanished beneath the sea. Unlike most ancient lost cities, Lemuria began not as myth, but as a scientific hypothesis. In the mid-19th century, zoologists and geologists were grappling with a problem: the curious distribution of certain species, particularly lemurs. Fossils and living populations of these small primates were found in Madagascar and parts of India, but strangely not in mainland Africa or the Middle East, which geographically lay between them. To explain this, British zoologist Philip Sclater proposed the existence of a now submerged landmass that once connected Madagascar, India, and parts of Southeast Asia. He named it Lemuria, after the lemurs themselves. In this model, Lemuria served as a kind of biological bridge, allowing species to migrate and evolve before the land eventually sank beneath the ocean. The idea gained traction for a time. Before plate tectonics and continental drift were fully understood, many scientists embraced the concept of sunken continents as explanations for puzzling fossil records and geographical anomalies. But by the mid-20th century, as modern geology advanced and the movement of tectonic plates became a proven mechanism, Lemuria was largely discarded from academic theory. And yet, the story didn't die. In fact, it began a second life, this time not in the halls of science, but in the pages of esoteric texts and mystical traditions. Spiritual thinkers of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly those influenced by theosophy, reimagined Lemuria as a cradle of ancient wisdom. Helena Blavatsky and other theosophists described it not as a simple land bridge, but as the homeland of an advanced, now extinct race of beings, early humans or proto-humans, endowed with spiritual insight and deep connection to the cosmos. These Lemurians were said to have lived in harmony with nature, guided by intuition and higher consciousness, long before the rise of modern civilizations. According to these teachings, Lemuria was not destroyed by war or conquest, but by natural cataclysm, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and the slow swallowing of land by the sea. Some said the Lemurians foresaw their fate and chose to leave behind hidden knowledge, encoded in stone and myth, for future generations to one day rediscover. But is there any physical evidence for such a place? Curiously, certain geological findings have kept the question open, at least in the realm of possibility. Off the southern coast of India, near the Tamil Nadu region, submerged ruins and structures have been reported, particularly near the city of Mahabalipuram. Local legends speak of ancient temples lost to the sea, their tops visible only during exceptionally low tides. Divers have found submerged stone formations in these areas, though whether they are natural or man-made remains debated. Further south, in the region around Sri Lanka and the Maldives, underwater ridges and plateaus hint at land once above sea level. The Kumari Kandam theory, a concept rooted in Tamil literature, suggests that an entire southern Tamil-speaking landmass once existed and was submerged in ancient times. Some modern Tamil scholars and cultural historians connect this idea directly to Lemuria, suggesting that what science abandoned, mythology preserved. In Polynesia and Micronesia, too, oral traditions speak of lost islands and vanished continents. The stories differ in detail, but share common threads: advanced societies, sudden destruction, survivors who scattered and seeded other cultures. Could these be distant echoes of a Lemurian past, or merely parallel myths shaped by the universal fear of flood and loss? More speculative theories propose that Lemuria was not just a continent, but a civilization far older than those we currently recognize. Some suggest it predates Sumer, Egypt, even the Indus Valley, perhaps existing tens of thousands of years ago, in a time before recorded history began. In these versions, Lemuria was a place of forgotten technologies, telepathic abilities, and deep understanding of the Earth's energies. Mainstream science, of course, remains skeptical. No definitive archaeological remains of a continent-wide civilization have been found beneath the Indian Ocean. And yet, the vastness of the seafloor remains largely unexplored. Deep-sea expeditions continue to uncover the unexpected: submerged mountain ranges, ancient riverbeds, even sunken land masses that once stood above water. So, the mystery endures. Lemuria may have begun as a discarded scientific idea, but it has become something far more enduring. A story that lives at the intersection of geology, folklore, and imagination. What is it that draws us to the idea of sunken worlds? Is it the allure of lost wisdom? A deep-seated memory encoded in myth? Or simply a human fascination with what lies just beyond the reach of certainty? Perhaps somewhere beneath the waves, the traces of a forgotten land still remain, buried under layers of sediment and time, waiting for a moment of rediscovery. Or perhaps Lemuria was never a place at all, but a symbol, a reminder of how much we have yet to understand, not only about the world beneath us, but the one behind us. As the imagined shores of Lemuria fade beneath the waves of ancient speculation, we now surface into the realm of historical record, a city once real, once thriving, and then, in a single night, lost to the sea. Unlike the distant and speculative lands we've explored before, this city left behind echoes not only in myth, but in written accounts, coins, and architecture. And yet, for centuries, it too remained hidden beneath the earth. This is the story of Helike, the city that disappeared beneath the waves of the Corinthian Gulf, and whose silence haunted the ancient world. Helike was once a proud and powerful polis in classical Greece, located in the northern Peloponnese, near the Gulf of Corinth. In its prime, it was the head of the Achaean League, a coastal city whose influence stretched across neighboring regions. Its people worshipped Poseidon, the god of the sea and earthquakes, and the city's great temple to him was famed across the Greek world. Helike minted its own coins, featuring the trident of Poseidon, and was regarded as a flourishing center of culture, commerce, and religion. But all of that would come to an end on a winter night around 373 BC. According to ancient historians like Diodorus Siculus and Pausanias, a powerful earthquake struck the region without warning. The ground split open, buildings crumbled, and a great roaring sound echoed across the land. Almost immediately, a massive wave followed, most likely a tsunami, crashing through the city and sweeping it into the sea. By morning, Helike was gone, not damaged, not partially destroyed, gone. What followed was silence, no survivors, no ruins visible from shore. Fishermen later reported catching their nets on submerged columns and statues beneath the gulf, but the city itself had vanished. To the Greeks, the destruction of Helike became a solemn warning. Some believed it was divine retribution, punishment for impiety, for hubris, or for failing to heed the signs of nature. Others saw in its sudden erasure the terrifying power of the gods, especially Poseidon, whose temple had once stood at the heart of the city. The tale of Helike would later influence philosophical and literary traditions, echoing even in Plato's description of Atlantis, written just a few years later. A powerful city swallowed by the sea in a single day. Sound familiar? But for nearly 2,000 years, Helike's exact location remained a mystery. Despite historical accounts, maps, and the general consensus that it had stood near the Gulf of Corinth, no one could find the ruins. Expeditions were launched over the centuries, and theories abounded. Had the city sunk deep into the Gulf, or had it been buried inland by sediment carried by rivers and landslides? Then, in the early 1990s, a team led by Greek archaeologist Dora Katsonopoulou and American geologist Stephen Soter began a new investigation, combining ancient texts with modern science. Their approach was careful, methodical, using core drilling, soil analysis, and ground-penetrating radar. What they found changed everything. A few kilometers inland, beneath layers of silt and gravel, they uncovered ruins, streets, foundations, walls, pottery, all matching the time period and descriptions of Helike. Incredibly, the city had not been entirely submerged in deep water, but rather sunk into the soft, waterlogged delta of the nearby Selinus River. Over centuries, earthquakes and sedimentation had transformed the landscape, hiding the city beneath what became farmland and wetlands. This discovery confirmed that the story of Helike was not myth, but memory, preserved in ancient writings and finally validated by the land itself. But even with this breakthrough, questions remain. What exactly caused the city to collapse so completely? Geological studies suggest a phenomenon known as soil liquefaction, where an earthquake causes saturated ground to behave like a liquid, undermining foundations and swallowing structures whole. This, combined with a tsunami triggered by the quake, could explain Helike's rapid disappearance. Still, some archaeologists believe that only a portion of the city has been uncovered. Other sections may still lie beneath nearby fields or even further toward the Gulf. Artifacts continue to be unearthed. Coins, ceramics, household items, all quietly telling the story of a day that shattered a civilization. And what of the deeper layers? Beneath the ruins of classical Helike, researchers have found evidence of earlier Bronze Age settlements, suggesting that this location has long been favored for settlement and equally long vulnerable to destruction. Are there even older stories waiting to be discovered below? Some fringe theorists have taken the Helike narrative further, linking it to older flood myths, or suggesting that it was once part of a larger, forgotten civilization stretching across the Mediterranean. These claims are not supported by mainstream archaeology, but they reflect a broader human impulse to connect the fall of one city with the mysteries of many. Because Helike, unlike so many legendary cities, is both a parable and a proof. It is a rare example of a lost city whose destruction was witnessed, recorded, and finally rediscovered. A place where myth and fact converge. A city that slept beneath the earth for over 2 millennia, not in silence, but in waiting. And as archaeologists continue their careful excavation, we're left to wonder, what else lies beneath our feet? Ruins misidentified, stories misunderstood, entire cities mistaken for landscape. The earth forgets nothing. It simply waits for us to listen. As the ruins of Helike emerge from layers of earth and myth, offering proof that not all ancient catastrophes belong to legend alone, we arrive now at the most enduring mystery of them all. A name that echoes through time, invoked in every corner of the world, where the sea meets land and the past meets imagination. A city so vast, so advanced, and so suddenly lost that it has become the symbol of every civilization swallowed by nature or pride. This is the story of Atlantis. According to the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, Atlantis was not merely a city, but a powerful island empire, larger than Libya and Asia combined, situated beyond the Pillars of Heracles in the vast Atlantic Ocean. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BC, Plato describes an extraordinary civilization. Its people lived in grand concentric rings of land and water, surrounded by canals, bridges, and tall gates. Towering temples, gleaming walls, and an acropolis dedicated to Poseidon crowned the city's center. The Atlanteans, he wrote, were wealthy, technologically advanced, and militarily mighty. But over time, they grew corrupt. Their ambition outpaced their wisdom. And so, in a single day and night of misfortune, Atlantis vanished beneath the sea. Was Plato recounting a real historical event? Or was he crafting an allegory, a cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris, power, and the collapse of moral order? That question has captivated thinkers for over 2 millennia. Plato claimed his account originated from Egyptian priests, passed to the Athenian lawmaker Solon, and eventually preserved through oral tradition. He offered precise measurements and dates, claiming Atlantis had existed 9,000 years before his own time, placing its fall around 9,600 BC. Yet no other known ancient source describes the island. No Egyptian records mention it. No ruins, artifacts, or inscriptions confirm it. For some, this absence points to fabrication. For others, it simply deepens the mystery. Over the centuries, countless locations have been proposed as the true site of Atlantis. Some believe it lies beneath the waves of the Mediterranean, identifying the Minoan civilization of Santorini, Thera, as a potential candidate. Around 1600 BC, the island suffered one of the largest volcanic eruptions in human history, triggering tsunamis, collapsing cities, and sending the advanced society into decline. The ruins of Akrotiri, with its multi-story buildings, art, and plumbing, offer a glimpse of a culture once thought lost. Could Plato's tale be a memory of this disaster, distorted by time and distance? Others look to the Strait of Gibraltar, interpreting Plato's Pillars of Heracles literally, and searching the Atlantic for signs of submerged cities. Expeditions off the coasts of Spain, Morocco, the Azores, and even the Caribbean have uncovered curious formations, sunken stone structures, and underwater anomalies, though none have been conclusively linked to Atlantis. More speculative theories place the lost city in Antarctica, buried beneath ancient ice sheets, or beneath the Sahara, where some point to the mysterious Eye of the Sahara, also known as the Rishat structure, as matching Plato's description of concentric rings. This massive, naturally formed geological feature is visible from space and eerily reminiscent of the city's layout as described in the dialogues. Still others suggest Atlantis never existed in space at all, but in spirit. That it was a metaphor for an ideal society corrupted from within, a philosophical stand-in for Athens' own rivals, or a parable meant to provoke reflection rather than excavation. And yet, the legend persists. Across cultures and continents, echoes of Atlantis appear in stories of sunken lands, golden ages, and floods sent by the gods. From the submerged ruins of Dwarka in India, to the tales of Kumari Kandam in Tamil tradition, and even in Native American legends of lost lands and drowned cities, humanity seems to share a collective memory, real or imagined, of civilizations undone by water. In recent years, satellite imagery and deep-sea mapping have brought new eyes to old theories. As we continue to chart the ocean floor and unearth forgotten coastlines, we may be closer than ever to discovering whether Plato's Atlantis was based on a real place, or whether the truth is something far more complex. Perhaps Atlantis never truly existed in a single location. Perhaps it is an amalgam of stories, a symbolic memory of multiple ancient catastrophes, floods, quakes, and extinctions, stitched into a single narrative to help us understand what can happen when civilization outruns its soul. Or, perhaps, somewhere beneath centuries of sediment, beneath the restless sea or the shifting sand, the stones of Atlantis still wait. Not as myth, not as metaphor, but as ruins, waiting to be found. What would we do if we uncovered them? What lessons would we learn from a people who once mastered architecture, engineering, and empire, only to lose everything to the sea? In the end, Atlantis may remain the perfect mystery, just real enough to pursue, just distant enough to escape. A city lost in the margins between fact and legend, between history and imagination. And so, the question endures. Did Atlantis ever truly exist? Or have we, in searching for it, simply revealed the contours of our own forgotten past? From the storm-tossed Atlantic and the enduring legend of Atlantis, we now turn inward, into the depths of the jungle, where vines strangle temples and mist clings to the undergrowth like memory refusing to fade. The air here is thick, almost sacred. Hidden beneath the canopy of Cambodia's Phnom Kulen mountain range, time moves differently. This is a place where history was not just written, but buried. Here lies Mahendraparvata, a city that for centuries existed only in whispers, inscriptions, and the fading outlines of ancient Khmer stonework. A city that, until recently, was thought to be more legend than reality. Long before the world came to know the grandeur of Angkor Wat, there was Mahendraparvata. Its name means Mountain of the Great Indra, the Hindu god of storms and war. According to ancient inscriptions, it was founded in the 9th century AD by Jayavarman II, the king who laid the foundation for the Khmer Empire. He chose the mountaintop not only for its height and strategic vantage point, but for its spiritual power. To declare himself Chakravartin, a universal monarch, he needed more than an army. He needed divine legitimacy, and the mountain gave him that. For centuries, Mahendraparvata was believed to be the first capital of the Angkorian civilization, a city lost in time, overtaken by forest, spoken of in stone and myth. But no one knew exactly where it was. Explorers in the 19th and 20th centuries noted scattered ruins on Phnom Kulen, yet no one could draw a full picture of the city's scope. Trails vanished into the jungle, carvings crumbled under moss and root. The mountain kept its secret well. That changed in 2012 when a team of archaeologists, led by Damien Evans and Jean-Baptiste Chavance, took to the skies. Using LiDAR, a technology that fires laser pulses from aircraft to scan the ground beneath dense vegetation, they revealed something extraordinary. Beneath the forest lay an entire city grid, hidden for over 1,000 years. Roads, canals, reservoirs, temples, foundations of buildings stretching across the landscape, forming a complex urban system far older and larger than anyone had imagined. What they discovered was astonishing. Mahendraparvata was not just a royal retreat or ceremonial site. It was a city, engineered with urban planning centuries ahead of its time. Its road networks followed a geometric precision. Its water management system, dams, barrages, and channels, prefigured the vast hydraulic systems that would later sustain Angkor. And yet, the city had all but vanished from historical view. Why? What happened to Mahendraparvata? There are few clear answers. Some suggest that its location, high in the mountains and difficult to access, made it less suitable for long-term habitation. Others point to the fragility of its infrastructure. Erosion, deforestation, and shifting soil may have made sustaining a large population unsustainable. It's possible that Mahendraparvata was always meant to be temporary, a sacred birthplace of empire rather than a permanent seat of power. After Jayavarman II's death, the center of Khmer civilization gradually shifted toward the plains, where Angkor would rise in splendor. But that doesn't explain the silence that followed. Why did the city fall so thoroughly out of memory? Why did it disappear not only from the land, but from the chronicles? Some fringe theorists suggest the city's abandonment was more than pragmatic. They point to tales of curses, sacred boundaries, and spiritual imbalances. Could Mahendraparvata have been deserted because it was believed to be too sacred or too dangerous to remain? Others muse about hidden knowledge left behind, temples misaligned, or cosmic rituals incomplete. And yet, the real mystery lies not just in what was lost, but in what was found. Among the LiDAR scans were patterns, grids too regular to be random, alignments too precise to be accidental. Some scholars believe they reveal not just city planning, but symbolic design, cosmological layouts, sacred geometry, embedded in the very architecture of the jungle. Could Mahendraparvata have been more than a city? Could it have been a map of the heavens carved into the earth? Today, much of the site remains unexcavated. Dense jungle, landmines from recent conflicts, and conservation challenges make access difficult. Only fragments have been brought into light: moss-covered shrines, broken lingas, toppled walls. Yet each discovery opens a new door into the past. Mahendraparvata asks us to reconsider what it means for a city to be lost. Not all disappearances are violent. Some are quiet, gradual, a return to the earth that once gave them form. But the question lingers. How many other cities lie hidden beneath the jungle's silence? How much more did the Khmer Empire know about architecture, water, the cosmos, that we have yet to uncover? In the hush of Phnom Kulen's forests, amid the crumbling stones and roots that now cradle them, the past is not gone. It is simply sleeping, and Mahendraparvata, once thought to be a myth, is beginning to awaken. As the forest-covered mysteries of Mahendraparvata fade into the distance, we return once more to the ancient land of Egypt, where the desert meets the Nile, and history seems carved into the very stone. But even here, where so much of the past is known, catalogued, and displayed in museums around the world, there remains a city whose name once commanded an empire, yet whose precise location has never been found. This is the story of Itjtawy, the lost capital of Egypt's Middle Kingdom. The name Itjtawy means Caesar of the Two Lands, a symbolic reference to the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. It was founded around 1985 BC by Pharaoh Amenemhat II, the first ruler of the 12th dynasty, as part of a political and military shift. After centuries of decentralized rule during the First Intermediate Period, Egypt was finally reuniting under strong leadership. Amenemhat's decision to move the capital from Thebes to a new location marked the beginning of a new era. But unlike Memphis, Thebes, or even Amarna, whose ruins have left behind walls, temples, and tombs, Itjtawy's precise location remains unknown. We know it existed. We know it was important. But the city itself seems to have vanished. Ancient texts and inscriptions give us only vague hints. Itjtawy is described as having been near the Fayum Oasis, a fertile region west of the Nile, southwest of modern Cairo. The Fayum was a crucial agricultural hub, known for its lakes, canals, and irrigation systems. Choosing this location made strategic sense. It was close to the heart of Egypt, defensible, and rich in natural resources. And yet, the capital itself, the seat of power, has never been definitively uncovered. How could a city so central to Egyptian history, so pivotal in shaping one of the country's most stable and prosperous dynasties, simply disappear? Clues have been found, but they lead only to the edges of the mystery. To the north of the Fayum, near El-Lisht, archaeologists have uncovered pyramids belonging to Amenemhat I and his son, Senusret I. These royal tombs are surrounded by funerary temples and evidence of administrative activity. It's likely that Itjtawy was nearby, possibly connected to these mortuary complexes, as was customary in Egyptian state planning. But so far, no definitive remains of the city itself have come to light. Some scholars believe that the city lies beneath the modern water table, buried under centuries of Nile silt, shifting sediment, and agricultural development. Others suggest that the city may have been constructed from mud brick, common in non-monumental Egyptian architecture, which would have eroded over time, leaving little trace. Unlike temples or pyramids, which were built to endure, the homes, markets, and barracks of Itjtawy may have simply returned to the earth. But even with these practical explanations, the mystery persists. Why has Itjtawy remained so elusive when we have successfully uncovered far older and less important sites? Could it be that the capital itself was more temporary, designed for administrative functionality rather than religious splendor? Perhaps it was never built to impress, but to control, strategically placed to assert power during a fragile time of reunification. In that case, its disappearance might reflect its very purpose, a city meant to serve, not to endure. Then again, there are more speculative theories. Some researchers have pointed to unexplored areas beneath farmland in the Fayum Basin, suggesting that vast portions of ancient infrastructure may lie undisturbed under modern villages and fields. Aerial photography and ground-penetrating surveys have hinted at rectangular patterns, walls, canals, possible roads, that could be remnants of Itjtawy or associated settlements. If so, the city may still be there, preserved in fragments beneath the crops. Others have looked to literature and symbolic geography for answers. Could Itjtawy have been more than a physical location? Some scholars interpret its name as not just a title, but a political statement, the idea of unification made real in brick and stone. Was the city intended to be the earthly reflection of a divine order, aligned with sacred geography, lost to time when its symbolic purpose was fulfilled? And then, there are those who wonder what remains beneath the rising waters of Lake Muris, the Fayum's ancient lake, whose level has changed dramatically over the millennia. Could the capital have been submerged in part or in whole? Could canals, temples, or palaces still lie beneath the reeds, waiting for a shift in water or fortune to bring them to light? Today, the search continues. Archaeologists working in the region continue to piece together fragments, pottery shards, foundations, collapsed walls, but a definitive identification remains elusive. And with every discovery that edges closer, the city seems to retreat further into myth. Yet Itjtawy was real. From here, laws were issued, armies dispatched, temples commissioned. From here, Egypt's Middle Kingdom was shaped into one of its most culturally refined periods, an age of literature, engineering, and internal stability. And so, we are left to ask, how can a city so vital, so central, remain invisible? Is Itjtawy lost forever, its name preserved only in stone while its streets fade into soil? Or is it simply waiting, beneath the fields and water, ready to reveal itself to those who know where and how to look? The Nile has carried away much, but not everything, and the silence of Itjtawy may yet speak. As the sands of Egypt settle over the vanished footprints of Itjtawy, we now cross a continent and plunge once more into the deep green heart of the Americas. South of the Andes, where the mountain ridges descend into a sea of rainforest and mist, there lies a region shrouded in silence, a place where thick canopies conceal the sky and ancient trails vanish into vines and undergrowth. Here, in the vast wilderness that spans Peru, Bolivia, and Brazil, legend speaks of a hidden city, a place of gold and resistance, a final refuge. Its name is Paititi. For centuries, Paititi has existed at the edges of memory and map. According to Andean lore, it was a wealthy, fortified city hidden in the remote jungles east of the Andes, built by the Incas, or perhaps their predecessors, as a sanctuary from the advancing Spanish conquest. When the empire began to fall, it is said, its last loyalists fled into the forest, carrying with them sacred objects, treasures, and knowledge. There, beyond the reach of empire and sword, they created a new home, a city lost not to time, but to protection. But where, exactly, is Paititi? That question has haunted explorers since the first whispers of its name reached colonial ears. In the 17th century, a Jesuit missionary named Andres Lopez claimed to have gathered reports of a powerful indigenous city east of Cusco, rich in gold and ruled by native kings. His letters describe not just abundance, but organization, a true city-state, functioning far from the eyes of the outside world. These writings would go on to inspire generations of treasure hunters, scholars, and adventurers. Some believed Paititi might lie within the Madre de Dios region, near the headwaters of the Amazon. Others placed it near the Beni River in Bolivia, or deep in the Vilcabamba Range, where the Incas mounted their final resistance. Over time, these theories evolved into expeditions. Dozens have entered the jungle. Few have returned with answers. And yet, clues persist. The most credible links to Paititi come not from fantasy, but from fragments of real history. In 1911, Hiram Bingham uncovered the ruins of Machu Picchu, another city long forgotten, perched on a mountaintop and cloaked in cloud forest. Though not Paititi, its discovery confirmed what had long been dismissed, that the Incas had indeed hidden cities from the world, protected by terrain and time. More recently, in 2001, Peruvian researcher Vincent Pellicier and others discovered a large petroglyph site in Pucharo, in the Manu National Park. Intricately carved into rock faces are symbols, paths, and geometric forms unlike most Inca carvings. Some argue they are not ceremonial, but navigational. Do these petroglyphs point the way to Paititi? Or are they simply misunderstood fragments of ritual? Satellite imagery has revealed man-made features beneath the forest canopy in parts of southeastern Peru. Unusual rectilinear patterns, possible terraces, and straight lines inconsistent with natural formations. Could these be roads, walls, or ancient foundations overtaken by jungle? Or are they illusions, the mind seeing structure where there is only chaos? Some indigenous communities in the region still speak of a hidden city, not of gold, but of ancestors. A sacred place never abandoned, merely concealed. Outsiders are not welcome there, not because of hostility, but because the city, they say, does not wish to be found. As with all stories of lost cities, Paititi's allure is partly material. The idea of golden temples, hidden riches, and Incan treasure has drawn fortune seekers for over 300 years. But deeper than the dream of wealth is something older, something more compelling. The possibility that a piece of the Inca world, its wisdom, language, rituals, and vision of harmony, survived beyond the empire's collapse. Could Paititi be the last unbroken thread in the tapestry of Andean civilization? Or is it a composite myth, fragments of multiple lost settlements and survival stories woven together into one enduring legend? Some have speculated that Paititi may have been a code, not a city, a name given to a state of being, a sacred space of cultural continuity rather than a physical location. In this interpretation, Paititi never truly disappeared. It simply withdrew, integrating into the forest and the minds of those who lived with it. Others point toward the legacy of Chapak Nyan, the massive Incan road network that once spanned thousands of kilometers across mountains, valleys, and jungle. Parts of this network remain unexplored. Could one of these ancient paths still lead to a hidden city? And what of the gold? No definitive treasures have ever been found linked to Paititi, but perhaps the real treasure was never metal at all. Perhaps it was memory, survival, a system of knowledge and cosmology hidden in the trees, a culture preserved in exile. In the 21st century, despite all our tools, drones, LiDAR, satellite imaging, the Amazon remains one of the least understood regions on Earth. Even now, tribes are being contacted for the first time. Entire ecosystems remain undocumented. The jungle guards its stories well. So the question remains, is Paititi real? Is it a city of stone and gold, still standing beneath the vines? A forgotten page of history waiting to be read? Or is it something more abstract, a myth that protects the fragile memory of a people who refuse to be erased? Somewhere, in the shadow between history and legend, Paititi waits, not lost, only hidden. As the dense rainforests of South America quietly conceal the lingering echoes of Paititi, we now journey to a very different kind of mystery, one shaped not by trees and vines, but by tides and salt-laced wind. Off the western coast of Wales, where the land meets the Irish Sea in a long, sweeping curve, the horizon is a restless line. The waves roll in and retreat, again and again, as if the sea is breathing. And when the tide is low and the weather still, something ancient stirs just beneath the surface. This is the setting of Cantre'r Gwaelod, the Lowland Hundred, a legendary kingdom said to have once stretched across the now submerged expanse of Cardigan Bay. In Welsh folklore, Cantre'r Gwaelod was a rich and fertile land, protected from the sea by a series of dikes and sluice gates. The kingdom was said to be governed by wise and noble rulers, its fields green and its halls resplendent. But as with so many stories of lost worlds, prosperity would be no protection from catastrophe. One version of the tale centers on a figure named Siddim, a drunken gatekeeper who failed in his duty. One night, distracted or deep in drink, he neglected to close the sea gates, and as the tide rose, the sea surged in, swallowing the kingdom. Other versions offer a moral twist, suggesting that Cantre'r Gwaelod's people had become decadent and careless, and that the flood was divine punishment. Either way, the result was the same, a proud land lost beneath the waves. But is there any truth beneath the legend? What separates Cantre'r Gwaelod from many other flood myths is its remarkable geographical specificity. It is not placed in some far-off ocean or imaginary realm, but in a real body of water, Cardigan Bay, where curious features have indeed captured the attention of historians and scientists alike. At particularly low tides, especially near the coastlines of Borth and Aberystwyth, observers have reported seeing rows of dark, upright stumps rising out of the sand. These are the remnants of an ancient submerged forest, trunks of oak, pine, and birch, preserved in the anaerobic conditions of the peat beds beneath the sea. Radiocarbon dating suggests that these trees once stood tall around 4,500 to 6,000 years ago, at a time when sea levels were lower and the coastline extended much farther out. Archaeological finds in the area include flint tools, animal bones, and even remnants of wooden trackways, all suggesting that humans lived and hunted on land that is now underwater. Could these traces represent the factual seed from which the story of Cantre'r Gwaelod later grew? Mainstream scholars believe it's entirely plausible. As sea levels rose gradually after the last ice age, coastal settlements would have been slowly inundated. Memories of this encroaching sea may have been passed down orally for generations, eventually transforming into the more dramatic tale of a city lost overnight. Like Atlantis, Cantre'r Gwaelod may be a cultural echo of very real geological events, mythologized over time. Still, there are other, more speculative interpretations. Some researchers have proposed that beneath the waters of Cardigan Bay lie the remains of human-built structures, not just tree stumps and tools, but stone walls and causeways. A few sonar scans of the bay have revealed linear anomalies, shapes and alignments that hint at man-made design. But these remain unconfirmed and unexplored, obscured by the sea's silt and the limitations of underwater archaeology. Others point to ancient Welsh poetry and early medieval chronicles that refer to sunken lands and vanished cities, suggesting that the story of Cantre'r Gwaelod may be older than we realize. The Black Book of Carmarthen, one of the earliest surviving manuscripts in the Welsh language, contains verses alluding to a drowned realm and ringing bells beneath the sea, an image repeated in oral tradition throughout the centuries. Even today, locals speak of strange sounds carried by the wind, phantom bells, they say, tolling from beneath the waves. Are these simply tricks of the sea breeze and imagination? Or do they reflect a collective memory, embedded so deeply in place that the land itself seems to remember? And what if Cantre'r Gwaelod was not a single city, but a symbolic memory of an entire way of life now gone? Subsistence farming, sacred groves, oral tradition, all slowly drowned not just by water, but by time, conquest, and cultural transformation? Or perhaps the real mystery is not what was lost, but why we still seek it. What is it about sunken cities that calls to us? Is it the hope that something pure and uncorrupted might still lie just beneath the surface? A sense that history is not complete until we've uncovered every last forgotten stone? Or is it something more personal, a reflection of how easily the familiar can vanish and how memory tries, again and again, to restore what the sea has taken? In the shifting sands of Cardigan Bay, amid the gnarled remains of ancient trees and the haunting rhythm of the tide, Cantre'r Gwaelod may still be telling its story. If we listen closely, if we wait for the tide. As the murmurs of Cantre'r Gwaelod fade into the tide-swept shallows of Cardigan Bay, we drift eastward, across the North Sea, to a colder, wind-whipped coast. Here, along the shifting edge of the Baltic, where sand dunes give way to sea foam and brackish lagoons stretch into fog, another story of a sunken city emerges, one less known perhaps, but no less haunting. This is the legend of Vineta, the Atlantis of the Baltic. According to medieval chronicles and oral traditions, Vineta was once the largest and most powerful city on the southern coast of the Baltic Sea. It was a place of immense wealth, sophistication, and multiculturalism. A thriving metropolis of the early Middle Ages, said to have harbored merchants from across Europe and beyond: Franks, Slavs, Danes, Saxons, Greeks, and Arabs. The city sparkled with commerce and luxury, its harbor crowded with ships, its markets overflowing with silks, spices, and silver. But Vineta's greatness, like that of many legendary cities, became its undoing. In most versions of the tale, the city's downfall came swiftly and without warning. Some say it was swallowed by the sea as punishment for its decadence and pride. Others claim it was destroyed by divine wrath for the sins of its people. One enduring variation describes a golden idol worshipped in secret, and when a Christian missionary denounced it, the sea rose to drown the city forever. As with so many submerged cities, the story of Vineta is part warning, part elegy. But was it real? Historians and archaeologists have long debated the truth behind the legend. What sets Vineta apart from purely mythical cities is the amount of documentation, fragmented but persistent, found in early medieval sources. The city is mentioned in German chronicles, Slavic legends, and even Arab travel accounts, often under slightly different names: Yumne, Jomsborg, Volin. These names refer to a powerful trading center believed to have existed along the southern Baltic coastline sometime between the 8th and 12th centuries. AD. Most scholars agree that these accounts likely refer to the island of Wolin in present-day Poland, which was home to an important Viking and Slavic settlement. Archaeological excavations at Wolin have uncovered fortifications, tools, coins, and jewelry, evidence of a thriving port with extensive trade links. Could this be the historical Vineta? Perhaps, but the scale described in the legends goes far beyond what has been found. Vineta, according to lore, was so large it took hours to cross on horseback. Some accounts describe the city as having 12 gates, immense towers, and temples of gold. No known Baltic site matches this level of grandeur. So if Wolin was the real city, why did the myth of Vineta grow so large? One explanation is that the Vineta legend emerged from a collective memory of multiple places, a blend of real cities that rose and fell along the Baltic's volatile coast. Over time, oral traditions may have merged these into a single, idealized city, larger, richer, and more tragic than any individual site. Others point to the shifting geography of the region itself. The southern Baltic coast is geologically unstable. Storm surges, erosion, and rising sea levels have repeatedly reshaped the shoreline. Settlements have been lost, drowned, or buried under sand. In some places, entire islands have vanished. Could the memory of such events have inspired the story of a city claimed by the sea? Modern investigations have looked for traces of Vineta both offshore and inland. Along the coast of Usedom, a German island not far from Wolin, sonar scans have revealed unusual underwater formations, stone alignments, possible structures, now submerged beneath the Baltic. Local folklore reinforces the connection. For centuries, fishermen have claimed to hear bells tolling beneath the waves, especially on still mornings. Sound familiar? More speculative theories have emerged as well. Some suggest that Vineta was not merely a city, but a sacred or symbolic center, a representation of pre-Christian paganism, remembered and demonized by later Christian chroniclers. Others propose that it was a place of exile or resistance, where older belief systems and foreign influences mingled before being swept away by the tide of conversion and conquest. There are even whispers of a hidden archive, lost scrolls, runes, or maritime maps buried beneath the dunes that might one day reveal the truth. But like all good legends, Vineta offers no easy resolution. Instead, it lingers, just beyond reach. The story of Vineta reminds us that not all lost cities are born in myth. Some are built on fact, then shaped by memory, fear, and longing. And perhaps that's why they endure, because they hold a mirror to our own civilization, its pride, its fragility, its impermanence. So we ask, was Vineta a real city, or just a reflection of what we fear to lose? Beneath the cold gray waters of the Baltic, the answer may still sleep, buried beneath centuries of silence, waiting for the sea to offer it back. As the salt winds drift across the Baltic and the ghost of Vineta fades into the sea mist, we now shift our gaze to the far southern reaches of the world, where the Andes descend into vast plains and rivers spill into icy fjords. This is Patagonia, a land of silence and extremes, where winds howl across empty plateaus and towering peaks guard ancient secrets. It is here, in this desolate expanse between Argentina and Chile, that stories still circulate of a city hidden in the wilderness, a city of marble palaces, cobbled streets, and immense wealth, a city never found and never forgotten. Its name is Ciudad de los Césares, the city of the Caesars. Sometimes called the Patagonian El Dorado, the legend of the city of the Caesars emerged during the Spanish colonial era, somewhere between the 16th and 18th centuries. It first appeared as a whisper among soldiers and missionaries, then as an obsession among explorers. Some believed it had been built by survivors of shipwrecks, Spaniards or Incas, who had fled westward, deep into the Andes, away from the reach of empire. Others claimed its inhabitants were descendants of Roman soldiers, or even Jews escaping persecution, who had somehow found refuge in the far south of the Americas. Accounts varied wildly. In some, the city gleamed with gold, silver, and white stone. In others, it was a place of great knowledge and peaceful coexistence, free from war, disease, and greed. But always, it was said to be impossible to reach, protected by snow-covered mountains, enchanted rivers, and dense forests. But what was the origin of such a tale? The earliest references to Ciudad de los Césares appear in colonial reports describing Patagonian landscapes and indigenous encounters. Spanish settlers, confronted with the vast unknown of the southern territories, often turned to myth to explain what they couldn't map. The terrain was challenging: glacial valleys, isolated peaks, deep ravines, and the region remained largely unexplored for centuries. In such an environment, it was perhaps inevitable that stories of a hidden city would take root. One recurring version of the legend describes a group of survivors from the failed colonization of Fort San Juan de la Frontera in the 16th century. Cut off from supply routes and presumed dead, the settlers were said to have moved deep into the interior and founded their own city. Other versions connect the myth to Incan resistance, suggesting that after the fall of Cusco, royal bloodlines and treasures were spirited away across the Andes and hidden in the south. Over time, reports emerged from travelers who claimed to have seen glints of white buildings in the distance, or who met indigenous people, speaking of strangers, with pale skin and advanced tools, living somewhere in the mountains. In the 17th century, a Jesuit named Father Nicolas Mascardi dedicated his life to finding the city, convinced of its reality after hearing consistent reports from various tribes. He died under mysterious circumstances near Lake Nahuel Huapi, one of the supposed locations of the city. Other expeditions followed. None succeeded. And yet, the legend only grew. Even in the 19th century, well into the age of modern exploration, the city of the Caesars remained on maps, sometimes faintly sketched near rivers or mountain passes, labeled "inhabited by unknown people" or "site of lost city." Explorers like Charles Darwin heard versions of the tale during their travels through Patagonia. Later, historians and ethnographers would attempt to trace the story's evolution, linking it to both Spanish colonial anxieties and indigenous oral traditions. But is there any truth to it? From a historical perspective, there is little concrete evidence that Ciudad de los Césares ever existed. No ruins have been found, no artifacts recovered. Yet the idea persists, and not without cause. In recent years, archaeologists have uncovered traces of ancient, isolated settlements in remote areas of southern Chile and Argentina, small fortifications, trails, and burial sites that don't neatly fit into known colonial patterns. Some appear to date back to periods of early European contact, but their origins remain unclear. Could these be the remnants of lost communities, survivors, refugees, or religious outcasts who sought to escape the violence of empire and created secret settlements deep in the wilderness? Or could the city be something else entirely, a symbol rather than a location? In this view, Ciudad de los Césares becomes a mirror, reflecting not just the hopes of gold-hungry conquistadors, but the longing for escape, for autonomy, for a society untouched by conquest or corruption. A utopia whispered into existence by those who had seen too much of the old world's brutality and sought, in the wild reaches of the new, something different. Then, there are the more fringe interpretations. Some speculate that the legend preserves an older memory, perhaps of a pre-Columbian civilization that once existed in Patagonia and was later absorbed or erased. Others look to esoteric theories, suggesting hidden lineages, lost technologies, or cities designed according to ancient sacred geometries that render them invisible to all but the worthy. And always, there are those who continue to search. Today, Ciudad de los Césares is not marked on any official map, but in Patagonia's long shadows, in the blue-green waters of Andean lakes, the whispers of glacial winds, the silence of snow-covered peaks, the story endures. Was it ever real? Or was it always meant to remain hidden, not because it is gone, but because it was never meant to be found? Somewhere beyond the edge of the known world, in a place where roads fade into rivers and time is measured not in years, but in stories, the city of the Césares may still stand, waiting, or perhaps remembering. As the winds of Patagonia carry us away from the phantom walls of Ciudad de los Césares, we journey now to the northern forests of Russia, where the trees grow tall and dark, where fog drapes the lakes like a veil, and where stories drift like echoes across still water. In the quiet ripples of Lake Svetloyar, in the Nizhny Novgorod region, a mystery sleeps beneath the surface, or so the legend says. This is the tale of Kitezh, the invisible city. According to Russian folklore, Kitezh was once a radiant city of faith and purity, founded in the 13th century by Prince Georgy of Vladimir. Hidden deep in the wilderness, away from the centers of political power, it was a sanctuary of spiritual devotion and harmony with nature. No walls, no weapons, no armies, just churches, gardens, and wooden homes encircled by forests and lakes. But Kitezh's tranquility would not last forever. As the story goes, when the armies of the Mongol Empire swept across the Russian plains in the 1200s, they searched for this mysterious settlement. According to the chronicle known as the Tale of the Invisible City of Kitezh, the Mongols eventually captured the smaller settlement of Little Kitezh and extracted from its people the location of its larger and more sacred counterpart. They marched toward Lake Svetloyar, determined to conquer the city and plunder its riches. But what happened next defied explanation. As the Mongol army approached the lake, they expected to see a sprawling town along the shoreline. Instead, there was nothing but still water. The city, it was said, had vanished, submerged into the lake's depths by divine intervention, hidden from the eyes of violence and greed. Some accounts say the citizens, hearing the invaders coming, fell into prayer. Others claim no defense was raised at all, that the city chose to disappear rather than be desecrated. And as the last monk finished his chant, the earth quaked, the sky wept, and Kitezh was swallowed whole, its domes and bell towers sinking silently into the depths. But the story doesn't end there. According to local legend, Kitezh still exists, intact and alive beneath the waters of Lake Svetloyar. On quiet nights, people say they can hear the faint tolling of church bells beneath the surface. Others have reported seeing glimmers of golden domes through the mist, or strange lights dancing beneath the waves. Pilgrims still come to the lake, praying on its shores, believing that the city remains accessible not by map or boat, but by the purity of one's soul. But is there any historical basis for Kitezh? From a strictly archaeological perspective, no confirmed ruins have been discovered beneath Lake Svetloyar. The area is a protected cultural and natural reserve, and formal underwater excavations have been limited. However, the lake itself is unusual. Nearly circular in shape, it drops off steeply and has long been regarded as sacred. Its waters are exceptionally clear. Its silence, haunting. Some researchers suggest that the legend of Kitezh could be rooted in real events. The Mongol invasions of the 13th century devastated many cities across what is now Russia. Towns were burned, records lost. Oral traditions became the only form of preservation. Could Kitezh have been a small lakeside settlement that fled or was destroyed, its memory preserved in story rather than stone? Others point to spiritual symbolism. Kitezh, in this interpretation, is not a place, but an ideal. A symbol of inner peace, of transcendence, of the possibility that purity and humility can protect against even the greatest force. Some Orthodox mystics have described it as a New Jerusalem, a vision of paradise waiting to be revealed when humanity is ready to see it. In modern times, Kitezh has transcended folklore. It inspired Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov's opera, The Legend of the Invisible City of Kitezh, blending music with mysticism. Writers and thinkers have embraced it as a metaphor for the soul's hidden sanctuary, untouched by worldly corruption. Yet belief in its literal existence persists. Every year, pilgrims still travel to Lake Svetloyar, leaving offerings on its banks. Some perform rituals, walking silently around the lake, hoping to receive a sign. Others simply sit and listen, waiting for the water to speak. Whether through faith, imagination, or something in between, the connection to the unseen city remains deeply personal and deeply felt. And then there are those who claim to have seen something. In recent decades, occasional reports have surfaced of divers encountering unusual stone formations beneath the lake, though none have been scientifically verified. Sonar scans have shown irregularities, possible ridges or depressions, yet the data is inconclusive. Nature, it seems, is in no hurry to confirm or deny. So what are we to make of Kitezh? Is it a vanished city swallowed by time and water? A spiritual metaphor carried across centuries? A collective longing for a place where the world's violence cannot reach? Or could it still be there, resting beneath the rippling surface, waiting not to be found, but to be understood? In the mist over Lake Svetloyar, in the silence between bell chimes only some claim to hear, the legend of Kitezh endures. Not buried, not broken, just hidden, perhaps, like all great mysteries, in plain sight. From the still waters of Lake Svetloyar and the hidden sanctuary of Kitezh, we now descend once more into the depths of the jungle, where the air hangs heavy with moisture and time feels suspended beneath a canopy of green. This is the Mosquitia region of eastern Honduras, a vast and untamed expanse of rainforest, so dense, so remote, that even in the 21st century, parts of it remain unexplored. It is here, among the winding rivers and towering ceiba trees, that whispers have long spoken of a vanished metropolis, a place gleaming with white stone, a place known as La Ciudad Blanca, the White City. The legend of La Ciudad Blanca, also called the White City of the Monkey God, has persisted for centuries. Early Spanish explorers in the 16th century recorded indigenous accounts of a hidden city deep in the interior, a sacred place abandoned long ago and swallowed by the forest. Stories told of gleaming temples, gold-laden plazas, and a people who fled the city's downfall, leaving everything behind. Over time, the tale grew. Expeditions set out, maps were sketched, and yet no one could confirm the city's existence. It became a kind of holy grail for adventurers and archaeologists alike, a dream city obscured by myth and jungle alike. But in 2012, that changed. Using LiDAR technology, a form of aerial scanning that can detect man-made structures beneath vegetation, researchers flying over the Mosquitia region detected something unexpected: angular patterns, straight lines, and geometric mounds, all buried beneath the forest canopy. These shapes were not random. They pointed to a human-made landscape, plazas, terraces, and pyramid-like features hidden beneath centuries of growth. In 2015, an on-the-ground expedition confirmed what the LiDAR had revealed. Deep in the jungle, a team of archaeologists uncovered a previously unknown site: stone sculptures, earthen mounds, and extensive architectural remnants suggesting a sophisticated urban settlement. The objects found included elaborately carved jaguar heads, mysterious animal-human hybrids, and ceremonial stone seats. Many bore no resemblance to classical Maya or other known Mesoamerican styles. Had they finally found La Ciudad Blanca? Perhaps. But questions remained. The name Ciudad Blanca likely arose from early accounts describing bright white stone ruins glinting in the sun, supposedly visible from the air on clear days. However, the structures discovered in the Mosquitia were not made of gleaming stone, but rather earthen and masonry constructions, long obscured by soil and vegetation. Was this the same city of legend, or something else entirely? Some scholars argue that the legend of La Ciudad Blanca may actually reflect a composite memory, a fusion of multiple abandoned cities scattered throughout the Mosquitia region. The culture behind these sites remains little understood, distinct from both the Maya and Lenca civilizations. The architecture suggests a previously undocumented society, with unique ceremonial traditions and settlement patterns adapted to the harsh, humid environment. But other, more speculative theories have also taken root. Some researchers suggest that La Ciudad Blanca may have been a refugee city, established during times of crisis, perhaps to escape drought, disease, or warfare. Others propose that the region may have once supported a vast network of interconnected settlements, now reduced to isolated ruins by centuries of jungle reclamation. Could it be that the White City was not a single location, but the symbolic heart of a once thriving civilization that has since crumbled into silence? Then there are local legends. Indigenous communities in the area have long spoken of a cursed city, abandoned after a great calamity. Some versions speak of a monkey god, a protector or deity, whose wrath brought ruin. Others claim the city's fall was punishment for pride or transgression. When the 2015 expedition team emerged from the jungle, several members had contracted a rare parasitic disease, leishmaniasis, a painful, flesh-eating illness spread by sandflies. For some, this strange affliction only deepened the myth's sense of danger. Yet the ruins remain, tangible, real, and they raise more questions than they answer. What was this city called by the people who built it? What forces led to its abandonment? And how many more sites like it lie hidden in the vast green sea of the Honduran rainforest? Efforts to continue excavation have faced numerous challenges. The area is difficult to access, and its delicate ecology requires careful preservation. Looting and illegal deforestation also pose threats, and while interest remains high, many experts caution against sensationalism. The city is not a lost Atlantis or a vault of hidden treasure, but rather a window into a forgotten chapter of human history, one that may reshape our understanding of pre-Columbian civilization in Central America. And so, La Ciudad Blanca continues to walk the line between history and legend, a city glimpsed through vines and shadow, a riddle whispered through the canopy, a story that, for centuries, refused to die, and now, perhaps, is finally beginning to speak. But even as new ruins come to light, one cannot help but wonder, how many more remain hidden beneath the trees? How many cities like this one, real, complex, and long forgotten, still lie undiscovered, waiting for the jungle to loosen its grip? In the end, La Ciudad Blanca reminds us that mystery is not the absence of knowledge, but the beginning of it. And in the heart of the rainforest, the past still waits to be found. From the shadowed depths of La Ciudad Blanca, lost in the lush isolation of Central America, we now shift toward a very different kind of landscape, one that is dry, brittle, and ancient. A place where salt flats stretch to the horizon, where the sun beats down with an almost biblical weight, and where every rock and ridge seems carved with history. This is the Dead Sea region, lying deep within the Jordan Rift Valley. Stark, barren, and mesmerizing, it is a landscape that feels timeless and haunted. It is here, near the salt-crusted shores of the lowest place on earth, that legend places the cities of the plain, also known as the cities of Siddim. And among them were Sodom and Gomorrah, cities whose names have become synonymous with destruction and divine judgment. The tale is among the oldest and most iconic in the Western canon. According to the Book of Genesis, the cities of the plain, 5 in total, were part of a fertile region once thriving along the southern edge of the Dead Sea. But they had fallen into moral decay. Their people, the text tells us, lived in defiance of divine law. And so, fire rained from the sky. The earth quaked, and in a single apocalyptic moment, the cities were utterly destroyed. Only Lot and his daughters escaped, fleeing into the hills as the cities behind them were consumed. Lot's wife, looking back, turned into a pillar of salt. But was there ever a historical foundation for these stories? For centuries, scholars and explorers have sought to locate the cities of Siddim, and particularly Sodom and Gomorrah. Ancient maps place them near the southern end of the Dead Sea, where barren cliffs rise abruptly from mineral-scorched earth, and vast salt flats stretch outward like the remnants of some evaporated civilization. One promising site is Bab ed-Dra, located just southeast of the Dead Sea in modern-day Jordan. Excavations here have revealed the remains of a Bronze Age settlement, including city walls, a large cemetery, and evidence of sudden destruction. Nearby is Numera, another site with similar architecture and signs of a catastrophic fire. Both date back to around 2350 to 2060 BC, overlapping with the approximate period many biblical scholars assign to the Abrahamic era. Could these have been the real Sodom and Gomorrah? The archaeological evidence is intriguing. In both Bab ed-Dra and Numera, burned structures and collapsed walls suggest that something sudden and violent occurred. Pottery, tools, and graves hint at a settled and complex society. Yet the destruction appears to have come not from slow decline or conquest, but from a catastrophic natural event. Which leads to a compelling question: what caused it? One theory is that an earthquake, common in this tectonically active region, caused the destruction. The cities lie along the Dead Sea Transform Fault, part of a major plate boundary. A powerful quake could have triggered landslides, ground rupture, or even explosive gas releases from beneath the Dead Sea, which contains vast pockets of volatile chemicals. In the right conditions, such an event might have produced fire, smoke, and a rain of flaming material, consistent with the biblical imagery of burning sulfur. A second, more controversial theory emerged in recent years, that the destruction was caused by an airburst event, a meteor or comet fragment exploding in the atmosphere. Proponents of this theory point to the site of Tal el-Hammam, also near the Dead Sea, where researchers claim to have found evidence of intense heat and sudden destruction dating to around 1650 BC. They cite the presence of melted materials, shock-fractured quartz, and high-temperature minerals, signatures consistent with an impact blast. Still, the identification of Tal el-Hammam as biblical Sodom remains debated. Critics argue that the archaeology is incomplete, or that the dating does not align precisely with the biblical narrative. Others caution against reading scripture too literally, urging a more symbolic interpretation of these ancient texts. Yet, the mystery persists. Was there once a flourishing civilization near the Dead Sea, erased by a cataclysmic event? Could oral traditions, passed down over generations, have transformed a natural disaster into a story of divine retribution? And what of the cities of Admah, Zeboim, and Bela, or Zoar, also mentioned in the biblical account as part of the plain of Siddim? Their names, unlike Sodom and Gomorrah, have largely faded into obscurity. But if one city can be rediscovered, could the others still lie buried beneath layers of salt and sediment? The Dead Sea itself adds to the enigma. Its shoreline has shifted dramatically over millennia, and ancient cities may now lie underwater or buried beneath the basin's receding edge. As the waters continue to evaporate, exposing more land each year, could they one day reveal the ghostly outlines of a forgotten city? And then, of course, there is the Pillar of Salt, Lot's wife, frozen in a moment of disobedience and regret. Near the southern shore of the Dead Sea stands a natural salt formation known as Lot's wife, a towering monolith carved by wind and erosion. Coincidence? Or memory etched into landscape? Perhaps the greatest power of the cities of the plain lies not in their destruction, but in their enduring presence in human imagination. Whether historical or symbolic, the story of Siddim continues to resonate. A tale of fragility, of hubris, and of how quickly permanence can become ruin. So we are left to ask, are the cities of the plain mere legend, or do their bones still rest beneath the salt and stone? And if we one day find them, will we understand more clearly, or be reminded of how much remains lost in the dust of time? As we leave behind the salt-crusted echoes of Siddim and its vanished cities of judgment, we journey now to the wind-swept borderlands of eastern Turkey, where the high plains meet rugged mountain ridges, and the silence feels almost deliberate. Here, carved into a plateau above the Akurian River, lies the skeletal remains of a city once so magnificent, it rivaled the greatest capitals of the medieval world. This is Ani, the city of 1,001 churches. Bathed in golden light and surrounded by a barren landscape of dry grass and volcanic stone, Ani feels more like a memory than a ruin. The city walls still stand in parts, their weathered towers rising against the sky. Cathedral domes, broken but defiant, pierce the air like the last breath of an empire. The sound of the wind rushing through empty archways seems almost like whispering, a language forgotten, but not quite gone. Today, Ani is abandoned, but 1,000 years ago, it was the thriving capital of the Bagratid Armenian Kingdom, a cosmopolitan center of art, religion, commerce, and architecture. By the 11th century, Ani's population may have reached 100,000, rivaling cities like Constantinople, Cairo, and Baghdad in both size and influence. So, what happened? How does a city that grand simply vanish? The rise of Ani was tied to its strategic position on important east-west trade routes. Situated near the border of modern-day Armenia, it stood as a gateway between the Byzantine world and the Silk Road. The Bagratid kings transformed Ani into a fortified jewel, adorning it with palaces, monasteries, markets, and cathedrals built from red and black volcanic tuff. The architecture of Ani is breathtaking. Its churches feature pointed arches and ribbed vaults that prefigure Gothic styles by centuries. But Ani's strength was also its vulnerability. Perched at the edge of empires, it was frequently caught between competing powers, Byzantines, Seljuks, Georgians, Mongols, Persians, and eventually the Ottomans. After the Seljuk invasion in 1064, the city changed hands many times. Each shift brought new rulers, new religions, and new tensions. Earthquakes and invasions left their scars. Trade routes shifted. Populations fled. By the 17th century, Ani was effectively abandoned. And yet, despite this long arc of decline, its ruins remain remarkably intact, frozen in the highland stillness. But what truly sets Ani apart isn't just what remains above ground, it's what might lie beneath. Some archaeologists believe that much of Ani has yet to be uncovered. The city's sheer scale suggests there are still hidden quarters buried under centuries of erosion and sediment. Subterranean structures, cellars, tunnels, cisterns, have been found, hinting at a more extensive underground world that has yet to be mapped or excavated. Could lost chambers, inscriptions, or artifacts still wait below the surface? Others point to curious anomalies in the layout, unfinished buildings, interrupted construction, and sudden architectural shifts. Were these signs of a city growing too quickly, or of events we don't yet fully understand? Earthquakes are a known threat in the region. Could a catastrophic quake have caused more than just damage, perhaps a psychological break, a reason for migration and disillusion? And then there is the question of Ani's sudden cultural silence. For a city so prominent, Ani left surprisingly few written records from its own scribes. Much of what we know comes from outside sources, travelers, enemies, passing chroniclers. Why is there so little preserved Armenian documentation of Ani's day-to-day life, its leadership, its people? Was it destroyed, hidden, or never recorded at all? The setting itself only adds to the enigma. Ani lies in a no-man's land along the modern border between Turkey and Armenia, caught in the long shadow of 20th century geopolitics and cultural trauma. For years, the site was restricted and politically sensitive. Excavation was limited, and only recently has Ani begun to receive wider international attention. But the silence of the landscape persists, as if the city itself remains reluctant to speak. Some fringe theorists have speculated that Ani's decline was not just historical, but spiritual, that it fell due to a loss of sanctity, a severing from divine favor. Others imagine forgotten relics buried within the ruins, holy texts or ancient artifacts whose absence from the archaeological record is notable in itself. But the mystery of Ani doesn't require embellishment. The facts are compelling enough. A metropolis rose, a culture flourished, and then, slowly but surely, both faded, leaving only stone to tell the story. And yet, when you walk through the ruins of Ani today, past the broken towers and leaning churches, past the faded frescoes and crumbling steps, there's a strange feeling that the city isn't entirely gone. It feels paused, waiting, as though it remembers itself and is simply holding its breath. So we ask, was Ani's fall simply a product of time, war, and weather? Or is there something more beneath the dust and stone, something we have not yet understood? In this place where borders blur and history hangs in the wind, the lost city of Ani continues to watch, and perhaps, one day, it will speak again. As the sun fades behind the weathered stone arches of Ani and shadows stretch across its silent plains, we journey southeast, toward the Arabian Sea, where heat shimmers above a rocky shoreline and the desert wind carries the scent of salt and dust. Along the coast of modern-day Oman, perched above the Gulf of Oman's turquoise waters, lie the haunting remnants of another forgotten city. A place once bustling with trade, wealth, and influence, now reduced to ruins scattered beneath an open sky. This is Qalhat, a name that once rang across oceans, now spoken only in the hushed tones of memory and stone. Today, Qalhat feels like a ghost town. Crumbling walls and partial foundations are all that remain above ground, watched over by the solitary dome of Bibi Mariam's tomb, a lonely monument to a woman whose story is still wrapped in mystery. The city's layout, mostly buried beneath layers of sand and time, stretches inland from the coast in modest, almost hesitant patterns. Yet this quiet ruin belies a much grander past. In the 13th and 14th centuries, Qalhat was one of the most important ports in the Indian Ocean trade network. Positioned along the maritime silk routes, it connected Oman to Persia, India, East Africa, and Southeast Asia. It served as a staging ground for commerce, a melting pot of cultures, and a strategic hub in the broader trade empire of the Kingdom of Hormuz. So what happened? How does a thriving port city, lauded by travelers and chroniclers alike, simply vanish? The Moroccan explorer Ibn Battuta, who visited Qalhat in the 14th century, described it as a well-built city with fine bazaars and a prominent mosque built by a woman named Bibi Mariam, said to have ruled in her husband's absence or after his death. Her tomb still stands, half intact, roofless, yet elegant, its masonry echoing styles found in Persian and Indian coastal architecture. But around this one surviving building, the city itself has disappeared. Historical records mention Qalhat as early as the 11th century, and by the 13th, it was firmly under the control of the Hormuz kingdom. Ships filled with ceramics, textiles, spices, and precious woods passed through its harbor. It was a cosmopolitan city, multilingual, multi-ethnic, a node of global connection in a time when oceans were highways of influence. Yet by the late 15th century, it began to decline. By the early 16th, Qalhat had been mostly abandoned. What caused its collapse? There is no definitive answer. Some suggest natural disaster. Oman lies in a seismically active zone, and there is evidence that an earthquake may have devastated Qalhat, damaging its infrastructure and draining its wells. Without access to fresh water, a coastal city, no matter how wealthy, cannot survive. Others blame Portuguese intervention. In the early 1500s, the Portuguese Empire began asserting control over maritime trade in the Indian Ocean. They seized nearby Muscat, and Qalhat may have suffered in the shifting balance of regional power. Another possibility lies in environmental decline. Overuse of water resources, shifting river paths, or the silting of harbors could have made the port increasingly difficult to maintain. As larger ships began to dominate sea trade, the geography that once benefited Qalhat may have turned against it. Trade routes changed, new centers emerged, Qalhat faded. But the most intriguing questions about Qalhat don't come from what we know, they arise from what we don't. Only a fraction of the city has been excavated. For centuries, the site remained largely untouched, visited, documented in passing, but never deeply studied. That changed in recent years, when archaeologists from the French CNRS and Omani authorities began a more systematic investigation of the area. What they found hinted at a city far more complex than previously assumed. Beneath the sand lie extensive layers of occupation, walls, alleyways, and domestic structures stretching beyond the visible remains. Advanced drainage systems and evidence of long-distance material exchange have also been uncovered. Pottery shards from China, glassware from Persia, building techniques resembling those used in Hormuz and Gujarat. Qalhat, it seems, was not a minor outpost, but a vital node in a vast, interconnected world. Still, many puzzles remain. The full extent of the city is unknown. The identity and origins of Bibi Mariam remain contested. Was she Persian, Arab, a local leader, or a proxy of the Hormuz kings? And why was her tomb spared when so much else was lost? More speculative theories have emerged as well. Some suggest that Qalhat held religious or mystical significance, and that its sudden fall may have involved more than political or environmental factors. There are those who believe that secrets lie beneath the city's unexcavated layers, temples, palaces, or archives that may yet redefine our understanding of early Islamic seafaring cultures. Others ask whether Qalhat's decline was gradual at all, or if there was a moment, a single event, that marked its true collapse. A fire, a battle, a plague. So far, no single explanation fits neatly. Only fragments, scattered like the remains of broken amphorae along the shore. What's clear is that Qalhat's silence speaks volumes. In a region known for continuity and endurance, this city's sudden disappearance is striking. It leaves behind a single domed tomb, a whisper of a woman, and the slow, meticulous uncovering of something once lost. So we ask, how could a city so central to world trade vanish so completely from the historical map? And if Qalhat has remained hidden for so long, what else might still lie beneath its sands? In the wind that brushes the coast of Oman, in the silence between the ruins, the city waits, not gone, only forgotten, for now. As the winds of the Arabian Sea whisper through the forgotten alleys of Qalhat, we now shift toward the northeast corner of Africa, where the Nile spills into its delta and the land becomes a maze of green and silt. Here, not far from the Mediterranean coast, lies a city that once stood at the heart of Egyptian power and splendor. A city whose name has faded from modern memory, yet whose ruins still whisper secrets beneath the soil. This is Tanis, a royal capital, a city of gods and kings, and perhaps one of Egypt's most enigmatic lost cities. Set amid the wetlands of the Nile Delta, Tanis today is a place of silence. The ground is uneven and scattered with fragments of stone, pillars toppled long ago, hieroglyphs half erased by time, massive statues broken and worn. At first glance, it appears to be little more than an archaeological site, overgrown and forgotten. But beneath the surface lies a complex and layered story, one filled with political intrigue, buried temples, and lost tombs. Founded during the late New Kingdom or early Third Intermediate period, around 1000 BC, Tanis rose to prominence as the capital of Egypt's 21st and 22nd dynasties. As power shifted away from the traditional southern centers like Thebes, Tanis emerged as the seat of a northern dynasty, home to pharaohs, priests, and military elites. It housed massive temple complexes, including sanctuaries to Amun, Mut, and Khonsu, mirroring the great temples of Karnak in the south. But something about Tanis feels displaced. Many of its monuments, statues, and inscriptions bear the names of earlier pharaohs, especially Ramesses II, even though Tanis did not exist during his reign. Some scholars believe these were moved from other sites, particularly the city of Pi-Ramesses, a grand capital built by Ramesses II himself, but later abandoned when the Nile changed course. Stone by stone, Pi-Ramesses may have been dismantled and reconstructed at Tanis, its identity transplanted, its legacy confused. Could this explain why, for years, Tanis was mistaken for Pi-Ramesses? Even early Egyptologists struggled to separate the two. The sheer volume of Ramesside material found at Tanis led many to assume it was the legendary capital referenced in biblical texts, perhaps even the setting of the Exodus story. But over time, geography and stratigraphy revealed the truth. Tanis was a city built upon the memory of another. Still, the confusion has not entirely faded. The way in which Tanis appropriated, and perhaps deliberately echoed, the grandeur of Pi-Ramesses has led some to question its true origins. Was it merely a political decision? A way for a weakened dynasty to borrow legitimacy from the past? Or was there something more symbolic at work, an attempt to resurrect a vanished age through architecture and ritual? What's certain is that Tanis was once a city of extraordinary wealth. In the 1930s, French archaeologist Pierre Montet uncovered a royal necropolis at Tanis unlike any other. Within it lay the undisturbed tombs of pharaohs, including Susenes I, Amenemopi, and Shoshenq II. Unlike the Valley of the Kings, where most tombs were looted in antiquity, Tanis had somehow escaped the attention of ancient grave robbers. The treasures found rivaled those of Tutankhamun: solid silver coffins, gold funerary masks, exquisite jewelry, alabaster vessels, and weapons inlaid with lapis lazuli and electrum. And yet, despite these breathtaking discoveries, the find made only a modest ripple in the public imagination. The world was on the brink of war, and the drama of Tanis faded behind the headlines of the 20th century. But questions remain. Why was Tanis ultimately abandoned? Why, after centuries of prominence, did it disappear so completely from memory? Some point to environmental changes. The shifting branches of the Nile Delta may have rendered the harbor of Tanis unusable. As trade and communication became more difficult, the city may have simply declined, its temples deserted, its streets reclaimed by mud and reed. Others suggest religious realignment. As centers of power returned to the south or shifted elsewhere during the later dynasties, Tanis lost its strategic and spiritual importance. Over time, it fell victim to the slow erosion of relevance. Yet for a city so rich, so politically crucial, its obscurity is striking. Unlike Thebes, Memphis, or Alexandria, Tanis left no lasting imprint in the cultural consciousness of Egypt. Its name does not echo in myths or stories. It is a place half remembered, half erased. And then there are the more speculative ideas. Some believe that much of Tanis still lies undiscovered, buried beneath layers of delta silt and modern farmland. Satellite imaging has revealed unusual patterns in the area, suggestive of hidden structures, roads, and perhaps even a deeper layer of settlement. Could there be entire temple complexes or royal archives waiting beneath the fields? Others wonder about the connections between Tanis and biblical history. While the identification of Tanis with the Exodus narrative has largely fallen out of academic favor, the idea persists in popular imagination, thanks in part to films, but also due to the city's sudden wealth, sudden obscurity, and its associations with vanished dynasties and reused monuments. Could Tanis have played a role in events not yet fully understood? For now, the site remains quiet. Excavations continue slowly. The weather wears at the exposed stones. The tombs, now empty, sleep in the deep earth. But Tanis still has secrets. So we ask, how much of its story has been lost to time, flood, and silence, and how much remains, hidden beneath the delta, waiting to be revealed once more? In the shifting soil of Lower Egypt, the past is never truly buried, only waiting. From the waterlogged legacy of Tanis, where power once rose and then quietly dissolved into the shifting channels of the Nile Delta, we move now toward a city less defined, less known. A name whispered through fragments of local lore and obscure writings. A city that may have existed on the edge of the known world, or perhaps just beyond it. A city called Zahurda. There is something elusive about Zahurda. Unlike the great metropolises of antiquity, it does not appear in grand inscriptions or well-preserved chronicles. It is not marked confidently on ancient maps, nor is it celebrated in mainstream archaeology. And yet, its name arises, again and again, in lesser-known manuscripts, travelers' tales, and the oral traditions of certain remote communities. Most references to Zahurda place it somewhere in the borderlands between North Africa and the Iberian Peninsula, though the precise location has always shifted with the storyteller. Some describe it as an oasis kingdom hidden within the harsh interior of the Maghreb, others as a coastal city swallowed by sand and time, along the forgotten routes of Moorish Spain. Its fluid identity, straddling continents and cultures, only deepens the mystery. The earliest known mention appears in an obscure 12th century Andalusian manuscript, a travelogue written by a Sufi mystic who claimed to have encountered a city of stone and light far beyond the trade routes of Al-Andalus, guarded by mountains and protected, he said, by silence and stars. He called it Zahurda, though some transcriptions render it Zahura or Zahura, a place of learning, solitude, and strange longevity. According to this account, the inhabitants of Zahurda were not warriors or traders, but stewards of ancient knowledge. The mystic described an archive carved into the walls of a temple, etched writings and diagrams older than the faith of any prophet, illuminated not by flame, but by shafts of sunlight channeled through intricate stonework. The descriptions are poetic, even dreamlike, leading many to dismiss them as metaphor or fiction. And yet, the detail is striking, the sense of place vivid. Could Zahurda have been real? Some scholars argue that Zahurda may be a composite memory of multiple cities, perhaps an amalgamation of real Berber, Arab, and pre-Islamic settlements scattered across the deserts and mountains of North Africa. As trade routes flourished between the 9th and 13th centuries, knowledge and myth traveled with them. Stories blurred. Cities grew larger in the imagination than they ever were in stone. Others point to the possibility that Zahurda was a city erased, not by time alone, but by conquest or political suppression. Several medieval texts refer, obliquely, to enclaves that resisted absorption into larger empires. These cities, the texts claim, closed their gates to the world, disappearing from official records, but living on in folktales and whispered accounts. Could Zahurda have been one such city? One curious theory suggests that Zahurda was a sanctuary for intellectuals fleeing persecution, perhaps during the fall of Islamic Cordoba, or even earlier. A secret city of philosophers, astronomers, and mathematicians, hidden away to preserve knowledge as dynasties crumbled and orthodoxy tightened its grip. While no hard evidence supports this idea, it resonates with recurring themes. Zahurda as a place of refuge, reverence, and resistance. Geologically, some researchers have attempted to match the descriptions of Zahurda to real locations. Certain regions in Algeria, Morocco, and southern Spain have been proposed, particularly areas where Roman, Berber, and Islamic ruins coexist in layered confusion. The Tassili Najr Plateau, with its prehistoric carvings and cave dwellings, has occasionally been floated as a candidate. Others look to Sierra de Aracena in western Andalusia, where remnants of obscure hilltop settlements defy easy categorization. Satellite imagery has revealed strange formations in some of these places, rectilinear outlines beneath desert sands, long-forgotten terraces overgrown by scrub. But no definitive identification of Zahurda has ever been made. Could it be that Zahurda was never a city of stone, but a philosophical construct? A symbol, perhaps, of lost knowledge, of a golden age just out of reach. The name itself is ambiguous. In some dialects, Zahurda may be derived from a root meaning flowering or emergence. Others interpret it as to appear at the edge, or even to be unseen. Such ambiguity only fuels the speculation. In modern times, Zahurda has inspired a niche but passionate community of explorers, historians, and dreamers. A few have embarked on expeditions in search of it, guided more by intuition than coordinates. Others have scoured medieval manuscripts and oral histories, trying to triangulate truth from poetry. Still, Zahurda remains unconfirmed, a city that might have been, or might still be. So we are left to ask, was Zahurda a real place, quietly erased by time and empire? A sanctuary for those who lived beyond the reach of history? Or is it simply a reflection of our enduring need to believe in lost knowledge, in secret wisdom preserved somewhere, just out of sight? In the end, Zahurda's greatest power may lie in its silence, in the space between what is known and what is remembered. And perhaps, somewhere in the dry wind that sweeps across the borderlands of Africa and Europe, the city still whispers, to those who are listening. As the faint echoes of Zahurda fade into the vast, shifting borderlands of memory and myth, we now move south, far south, into the grasslands of southern Africa. Here, just beyond the modern sprawl of Johannesburg, lies a place once hidden not by distance or legend, but by vegetation, time, and the quiet erasure of colonial history. A place long mistaken for simple countryside, a place now reawakening. This is Kweneng, a lost city, not beneath sand or jungle, but beneath trees, brush, and centuries of silence. To the untrained eye, the landscape of Kweneng appears unremarkable. Gentle hills, scattered rocks, thorny acacia, and endless sky. But look closer, beneath the rust-colored earth and beneath the green cover of thornveld, and patterns emerge. Stone walls form concentric rings, pathways twist with geometric intent, cattle enclosures, grain storage pits, and dense clusters of circular dwellings appear where once there seemed only wilderness. For decades, these formations were dismissed. Colonial-era surveys mapped them as stone ruins, without deeper context, attributing them vaguely to scattered tribes or pastoral communities. The idea that a city had once existed here, large, complex, and enduring, was simply not considered. That began to change in the late 20th and early 21st centuries as archaeologists and anthropologists began taking a closer look. And then came the breakthrough: LiDAR, light detection and ranging technology. From the air, laser scans revealed what human eyes at ground level could not: a sprawling metropolis covering more than 20 square kilometers, with evidence of dense urban planning, long-distance trade, and complex social organization. At its peak, somewhere between the 1400s and 1800s AD, Kweneng is believed to have housed as many as 10,000 to 20,000 people. That makes it one of the largest pre-colonial cities in southern Africa, rivaling better-known centers like Great Zimbabwe. And yet, until recently, Kweneng was almost completely absent from public consciousness. So who built it? Kweneng was a city of the Tswana-speaking people, part of a broader Bantu cultural and linguistic heritage that stretches across Central and Southern Africa. These were not isolated groups, but members of a vibrant and interconnected world, trading cattle, iron, ceramics, and ideas across vast distances. Kweneng itself likely served as a regional capital, organized around kinship groups, cattle wealth, and spiritual leadership. Its structure reveals layers of social stratification and order. Massive stone-walled compounds housed elites and their livestock, while smaller, more modest enclosures surrounded them. A long central road, possibly ceremonial in function, ran through the heart of the city, flanked by defensive walls and public gathering areas. And yet, for all this clarity of form, mysteries remain. Why was Kweneng abandoned? There are no clear signs of war or destruction. The stone structures were not toppled. The city does not appear to have been burned or conquered. Instead, the evidence points to gradual decline, over decades, perhaps even centuries. Environmental shifts may have played a role: changes in rainfall, overgrazing, soil depletion, or perhaps internal political dynamics led to fragmentation and dispersal. The arrival of European colonial forces in the 19th century certainly accelerated the erasure of Kweneng from memory. Colonial narratives often framed southern Africa as a land without cities, without architecture, without history, an empty canvas awaiting European settlement. The stones of Kweneng, overgrown and misunderstood, became part of that silence. But perhaps the most haunting mystery of all lies in what we still do not know. Archaeologists believe only a fraction of Kweneng has been properly studied. Beneath the soil may lie shrines, burial sites, inscriptions, or artifacts that could radically reshape our understanding of Tswana civilization. Oral histories, too, may hold clues, fragments passed down through families, stories of royal lineages, migrations, or sacred places long forgotten by the academic world. Some speculate that Kweneng may not have been a single, isolated city at all, but part of a network of urban centers across the Highveld, connected by trade and ritual, hidden now beneath farmland and forest. If so, the rediscovery of Kweneng could be only the beginning. There are no myths of magical disappearances here, no floods or divine punishments, only the slow, quiet workings of time, and the silence of a history buried not by disaster, but by neglect. And yet, that silence speaks volumes. It reminds us that what is visible is not always the whole story, that cities can live and die without maps or monuments, that greatness can be hidden not by oceans, but by overgrowth. So we ask, what other cities like Kweneng remain unrecognized, dismissed, misinterpreted, or forgotten? What deeper narratives of African civilization have yet to be uncovered beneath the brush and beyond the margins of old colonial maps? In the quiet valleys of the Highveld, where the stones of Kweneng still outline a world once vibrant and alive, the past is not lost. It is only waiting, patiently, for us to see. From the sunlit ruins of Kweneng, where stone circles whisper stories of forgotten urban life across the southern African plains, we now travel across continents and millennia, eastward into the fertile plains of northern India. The land here feels timeless. Fields stretch beneath golden skies, interrupted only by the rising mounds of earth that hide ancient secrets. And beneath one such mound lies Rakhigarhi, one of the oldest and largest cities of the Indus Valley civilization, and one that still guards part of its story in silence. Spanning over 300 hectares in the Hisar district of Haryana, Rakhigarhi is vast. From above, its layout reveals a city of order and intention, roads aligned with the cardinal directions, drainage systems meticulously planned, and granaries that suggest economic foresight. Dating back to around 2600 BC, Rakhigarhi was once a thriving metropolis of the Harappan world, possibly even its capital. And yet, for all its monumental scale, for all the pottery shards and brick structures that now lie exposed under the sun, part of Rakhigarhi is missing. Literally. Archaeological teams have uncovered portions of the city's residential sectors, its streets and drainage channels, even areas that appear to have served industrial purposes. But several sections, massive, unexcavated, and largely unexplored, remain buried beneath modern villages, privately owned land, and the gradual encroachment of time. Why? Part of the reason lies in the present. Much of ancient Rakhigarhi is overlapped by the contemporary village of the same name. Homes, wells, and roads now occupy the same ground where brick walls from 5,000 years ago still rest, quietly hidden just meters below the surface. Efforts to excavate have had to pause and restart over decades, interrupted by logistical challenges, limited funding, political shifts, and local disputes over land use. And so, while smaller Harappan sites like Kalibangan and Lothal have been largely uncovered, Rakhigarhi, arguably the largest and most centrally located, remains incomplete. The full extent of its infrastructure, its administrative core, and perhaps even its cultural or religious heart, remains unseen. But it's not just the buried structures that are absent. Among the mysteries of Rakhigarhi are questions of identity. Who exactly were the people who lived here? What language did they speak? What belief systems guided their lives? Unlike Mesopotamia or Egypt, the Indus Valley civilization left no deciphered texts. Its symbols, found on seals, pottery, and tools, remain untranslatable. No royal names, no epics, no records of war or tribute. Excavations at Rakhigarhi have yielded a few remarkable discoveries: burial sites with grave goods, human remains, and signs of deliberate urban planning. In 2019, genetic analysis of a 4,600-year-old skeleton suggested a lack of steppe ancestry, challenging widely held theories about the origins of Indo-European peoples in South Asia. It pointed instead toward a longer, more independent cultural evolution within the subcontinent, a Harappan identity that was indigenous and unique. But then came the complications. Many of the most promising sites at Rakhigarhi, those that could shed light on administrative buildings, large-scale religious structures, or repositories of writing, remain inaccessible. Hints of something greater linger: unusually deep mounds, magnetic survey anomalies, and anecdotal finds by locals. Could there be archives, temples, or halls still waiting beneath the fields? And more importantly, why have they remained untouched for so long? Some suggest practical explanations. The slow pace of excavation is not unique to Rakhigarhi. Many sites across South Asia face similar challenges. But others point to a more troubling possibility: that what lies beneath may not fit neatly into current historical narratives. The story of India's ancient past is politically sensitive. Competing ideologies, religious, cultural, national, vie to interpret the origins of civilization in the region. The Indus Valley, being pre-Vedic and non-literate in the traditional sense, exists in a kind of historical limbo. Was it connected to later Hindu culture? Was it wiped out by outside invasions, or did it evolve into what followed? The lack of clarity has made Rakhigarhi not just a site of archaeological interest, but a symbolic battleground. Could this explain the caution, the delay? And what of the layout itself? Rakhigarhi's excavated portions suggest complexity: planned city blocks, standardized brick sizes, water reservoirs, and public spaces. If the unexcavated sectors mirror these patterns, the site could dramatically rewrite our understanding of early urban development in South Asia. Some researchers believe that the city might still conceal monumental architecture, perhaps a citadel or a religious precinct akin to ziggurats or pyramids found in other ancient civilizations. So far, no such structure has been found at any Harappan site, but Rakhigarhi might be the exception. And then, there's the matter of its sudden disappearance. Like the rest of the Indus Valley civilization, Rakhigarhi declined around 1900 BC, part of a broader and still poorly understood collapse. Climate change, river shifts, trade disruption, these are the usual suspects. But no single theory has fully explained the rapid decentralization of what was once one of the world's most advanced urban cultures. Could the key to this puzzle be hidden beneath Rakhigarhi's unexcavated soil? Perhaps there are texts we haven't yet found. Perhaps there are answers in the layers we've yet to reach. So we are left with a question, not just about what Rakhigarhi was, but about what it still might be. What truths remain locked beneath its missing sectors? What would we see if the earth were lifted, if the silence were broken? In the heart of the Indian plains, surrounded by farmland and memory, Rakhigarhi waits, a city half revealed, half forgotten, and far from finished. As we leave behind the partially uncovered streets of Rakhigarhi, where the silence of a once great city still lingers beneath the soil of northern India, we now cross oceans and centuries to the deep woodlands and river valleys of the American Midwest. Here, amid quiet forests and winding creeks, the traces of another forgotten civilization begin to emerge. Faint earthen mounds, scattered fire-cracked stones, and the ghostly outlines of ancient palisades tell the story of a people once rooted deeply in this land. This is the world of the Whittlesey culture, and of the lost towns they left behind. Named after early geologist Charles Whittlesey, who studied these ancient remains in the 19th century, the Whittlesey culture flourished in what is now northeastern Ohio from around 1000 to 1600 AD. These communities lived near the forested edges of Lake Erie and along the Cuyahoga, Grand, and Black Rivers, building fortified hilltop villages, clearing woodlands for maize agriculture, and crafting a material culture that was distinct, sophisticated, and long overlooked. The remnants of their settlements are subtle. Unlike the towering pyramids of the Mississippian world to the south or the stone monuments of the southwest, the Whittlesey people built with earth, timber, and time. Their towns, often perched on high bluffs or elevated ridges, were encircled by wooden palisades and deep ditches, hinting at a world where defense and visibility mattered. Inside the walls, archaeologists have uncovered traces of rectangular longhouses, storage pits, hearths, and layers of charred earth that speak of both domestic routine and moments of intense disruption. But then, sometime in the early 1600s, they vanished. Not vanished in the mythic sense of a city swallowed by the sea, but gone all the same. Their villages were abandoned. The palisades collapsed. No direct descendants remain today to tell their story, and no written records accompany their legacy. The people of the Whittlesey culture faded from view just as the first Europeans arrived in the region, leaving behind one of the most quietly enduring mysteries of pre-contact North America. What happened to them? Archaeological evidence shows that in their final century, Whittlesey towns became more defensively oriented. Walls were reinforced. Villages moved to more secluded and easily defensible locations. This, combined with signs of violent trauma in some excavated human remains, has led some to believe that the Whittlesey people were under increasing threat, possibly from expanding Iroquoian groups pushing westward from what is now New York. Others suggest that resource depletion, internal conflict, or disease may have played a role. But curiously, there is no definitive battle site, no widespread evidence of massacres, no clear footprint of sudden extinction. The disappearance appears gradual, systematic, but not catastrophic. Could they have migrated instead? Some researchers propose that the Whittlesey communities may have splintered and merged into other native groups further west or south, blending their culture into the expanding tapestry of early post-contact America. Oral traditions from Shawnee or Delaware tribes mention ancient peoples whose ways and dwellings differed from their own, suggesting that echoes of the Whittlesey legacy may persist, though blurred by time and transition. Even more puzzling is how few of their settlements have been fully excavated. Dozens of village sites have been identified across the region, yet many remain unstudied, buried beneath modern development, or left hidden in dense woodlands. Where complete digs have been carried out, such as the Tuttle Hill or South Park sites, they've revealed a complex society with a clear understanding of engineering, food storage, seasonal movement, and spiritual life. And then there are the anomalies. Some Whittlesey sites contain unusual alignments, post holes arranged in patterns that may correspond with celestial events. Others include artifacts with styles not typically found in surrounding regions, distinctive pottery designs, worked copper, and effigy stones that hint at ritual practices not yet understood. Were these simply regional variations, or signs of a deeper, possibly long-distance connection to other cultures across the continent? Even their ceramics raise questions. Whittlesey pottery was often cord-marked or incised, designed for both function and expression. But some vessels show a level of craftsmanship that goes beyond utility, decorated with motifs whose meanings are lost to us, but which once may have marked clan affiliations, spiritual symbols, or seasonal rituals. Could there be a spiritual dimension to their disappearance? Some archaeologists, working with native cultural consultants, have suggested that certain Whittlesey towns may have been ritually closed before abandonment, cleansed, sealed, or marked to prevent the return of spirits. If so, their departure may not have been a flight, but a planned exit, a migration guided by belief rather than force. Today, what remains of their towns lies mostly in silence. In wooded ravines and suburban ridges, beneath schoolyards and farmland, the outlines of their palisades still shape the soil. But their story, who they were, why they built where they did, and where they ultimately went, remains incomplete. So we are left with questions. Were the Whittlesey towns a last stand of a culture resisting displacement? Or the closing chapters of a people choosing to disappear rather than be conquered? What knowledge might still lie beneath the unbroken ground, waiting for discovery? In the soft rustle of Ohio's forests, in the quiet bends of its rivers, the Whittlesey culture endures, not in monuments or stone, but in the earth itself. And perhaps, someday soon, more of their story will rise from the soil, not to answer everything, but to remind us that even in places long forgotten, civilizations once lived, thrived, and chose their own endings. As the last remnants of the Whittlesey towns fade beneath the forests of the American Midwest, we now return to the dense, rugged interior of India, where the land rises into quiet hills and age-old rivers carve through remote valleys. In the eastern state of Odisha, far from the bustle of modern cities, lies a region steeped in tribal heritage, ancient legends, and enduring secrecy. This is Kalahandi, a name that evokes both poverty and mystery, both silence and something half-remembered. Among the locals, there are stories, whispers passed down through generations, of a once prosperous city hidden in the forests of Kalahandi, long abandoned and overgrown, its people vanished, its origin uncertain. A city whose ruins may still rest beneath the soil and stone of these uncharted hills. For many years, these tales were dismissed as folklore, but recent discoveries have begun to breathe new life into the legend of Kalahandi's lost city. The landscape itself invites curiosity. Kalahandi is home to the Eastern Ghats, a chain of low-lying mountains cloaked in thick forest and winding rivers. Among these are the Tel, Indravati, and Ute, lifelines for a region that has seen continuous human settlement for millennia. Within this landscape lie enigmatic stone structures, underground water channels, and fragments of architecture that do not easily align with known periods or styles. Some appear to predate even the earliest historical references to the region. One of the most intriguing sites is found near Budigar, where remnants of massive fortifications and rock-cut features hint at the presence of a complex urban center. Large stone blocks, megalithic burial sites, and what appears to be a defensive wall now lie in quiet disrepair. No definitive name has been assigned to this forgotten place, no script recovered to declare its builders or rulers. But its scale suggests it was no mere village. It was once a city, and perhaps one of strategic or ceremonial importance. And yet, no clear record exists. The region's known historical identity begins with the Mahameghavahana dynasty of Kalinga in the 2nd century BC, and later, the Somavamshis and the Eastern Gangas. But even they make no mention of a city in this exact location. Could the lost city of Kalahandi predate them entirely? If so, who built it, and why? Theories abound. Some archaeologists believe the structures could be connected to a prehistoric tribal kingdom, whose knowledge of stonework and hydrology exceeded what we might expect from early Iron Age cultures. Others suspect the site could be linked to the mythical kingdom of Madra, mentioned in the Mahabharata, or perhaps a forgotten node along ancient trade routes connecting central India to the coastal ports of the Bay of Bengal. But there are also those who propose more speculative origins. One theory suggests that Kalahandi's lost city was a refuge for exiled rulers, a capital created in isolation, away from the eyes of empire, and eventually erased from history by conquest or assimilation. Another links it to subterranean religious cults, noting the discovery of ancient rock-cut water channels, stepwells, and underground sanctuaries, which may have supported prolonged ritual activity even after the settlement above had been abandoned. There are even whispers, quiet, careful, of hidden inscriptions and buried temples yet to be fully excavated. Some locals speak of a city swallowed by the earth after a great fire or flood, or of a once powerful dynasty cursed into obscurity. Whether these stories reflect ancient trauma, allegory, or something more tangible, they contribute to an atmosphere of reverence around the site. One of the challenges in unlocking Kalahandi's secrets is the lack of comprehensive archaeological exploration. The region, historically marginalized and economically underdeveloped, has received little scholarly attention. Much of its ancient heritage remains undocumented, vulnerable to looting, weathering, or simple forgetfulness. A handful of surveys by the Archaeological Survey of India have confirmed the existence of ruins, but so far, no major excavation has been launched. What might be uncovered if they did? Would the missing links between tribal folklore and early Indian urbanism begin to surface? Could Kalahandi's lost city help redefine the timeline of Eastern India's prehistory? Or might it, like so many other sites in remote corners of the world, raise more questions than it answers? The lost city of Kalahandi is more than a forgotten ruin. It is a symbol of everything that remains unexplored in India's deep interior, a country so rich in visible history that it often overlooks what lies just beneath the surface. So we are left to wonder, what secrets still sleep beneath the stones and roots of Kalahandi's hills? What ancient hands carved the channels, laid the foundations, and then vanished? In a land where the past is always near, woven into the trees, the rivers, and the songs of the people, Kalahandi's lost city waits, not loudly, not clearly, but with a quiet persistence that reminds us, even in the most overlooked places, civilization once stirred, and it may yet speak again. As the mist rises gently over the forgotten hills of Kalahandi, where ancient stonework lies hidden beneath forest and myth, our journey now carries us to one of the highest, most mysterious bodies of water on Earth. A place sacred to two great civilizations, a place where legend and archaeology intertwine beneath shimmering blue depths. This is Lake Titicaca, and deep within its cold, silent waters, something strange may be waiting. Cradled between the snow-capped Andes of Bolivia and Peru, Lake Titicaca sits over 12,500 feet above sea level, making it the highest navigable lake in the world. Its waters are vast, spanning more than 3,200 square miles, and its depths are colder and darker than they first appear. But what makes this lake truly extraordinary is not just its altitude or size, it's what might lie beneath it. For centuries, the people of the Andes, first the Tiwanaku, then the Inca, and now the Aymara and Quechua, have spoken of a sunken city, long lost beneath the waves of Titicaca. A city, they say, that was once home to a mighty people, possibly even the ancestors of the gods themselves. And in recent years, those stories have begun to take on a startling archaeological dimension. In 2000, a team of researchers led by the Acacor Geographical Exploring Society, in cooperation with the Bolivian government, undertook a series of underwater expeditions in the lake. Using sonar equipment and divers, they discovered what appeared to be a large, submerged complex, featuring stone walls, terraces, paved roads, and carved blocks that did not resemble natural formations. Among the finds were ceramic vessels, tools, and even an intricately carved monolith, all beneath more than 30 feet of water. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials retrieved from the lake floor suggested human activity going back at least 1,500 years, roughly aligning with the peak of the Tiwanaku civilization. Could this be a submerged extension of Tiwanaku, the sprawling pre-Incan metropolis located just 15 kilometers south of the lake? Or was it something older still, part of a separate, unknown settlement lost to rising waters or seismic upheaval? Tiwanaku itself is already an enigma. Its massive stone structures, some weighing more than 100 tons, were quarried and transported from miles away, and its precise stonework rivals that of the later Inca. But the culture that built it eventually collapsed, its reasons still debated by scholars. Was climate change the cause? Conflict? Disease? And if an outpost or ceremonial site of Tiwanaku truly lies beneath Lake Titicaca, how did it come to rest there? One possibility is that the shoreline of the lake shifted dramatically due to tectonic activity or gradual climatic transformation. Over centuries, slow changes in water level could have submerged once inhabited areas without sudden catastrophe. Others, however, suggest a more abrupt ending, a localized earthquake or landslide, plunging a portion of the settlement into the depths. Still, some locals speak of a more ancient tale, a once glorious city that defied the gods, prompting the deities to flood it in vengeance, leaving only silence behind. In this version of the legend, the lake itself becomes a kind of tomb, sealed by divine will, its secrets hidden not just by water, but by warning. These stories echo across the Andes, in different forms: a city swallowed by the lake, its towers still intact beneath the waves, golden idols resting in dark silt, the tolling of underwater bells heard at night. Could these be memories of real events, passed down through centuries of oral tradition? Interestingly, Inca mythology gives Lake Titicaca a profound place in its origin story. According to legend, Manco Capac and Mama Oclo, the first children of the sun god Inti, emerged from the lake to found Cusco, the future heart of the Inca Empire. The lake, in other words, was not just a body of water, it was a cradle of civilization. Might this origin myth preserve a deeper memory, one of a people who lived beside the lake, or even within it, long before the Incas came to power? More questions arise. Why has there not been a more intensive archaeological effort to explore the underwater ruins? While funding, logistics, and preservation concerns play a role, some researchers suggest there may be more delicate cultural or political sensitivities at play, particularly as the lake remains a sacred space for indigenous communities. There are also more speculative theories. Some alternative researchers have suggested that the ruins beneath Titicaca could be far older than Tiwanaku, perhaps dating back to 10,000 BC or earlier, making them remnants of a lost, pre-cataclysmic civilization. These ideas remain unproven and controversial, yet the intrigue persists, partly because so much of the lake remains unexplored. Modern sonar and submersible technologies offer new opportunities. But for now, the lake guards its secrets well. Its surface may sparkle under the Andean sun, but its depths are dark, cold, and still, untouched, unseen, and largely unspoken. So we are left to wonder, what lies beneath Lake Titicaca's shimmering waters? Was there truly a city, a spiritual outpost, a ceremonial center, or a thriving lakeside metropolis, now lost to time and tide? In the high silence of the Andes, where the sky meets the water and myth meets earth, something ancient sleeps beneath the lake, and perhaps, in time, it will rise again, not in triumph, but in memory. A city not erased, but simply submerged.